Good morning. The January 27th Board of Directors meeting is called to order. What did it say? Because that's what it says on my agenda. All right, we're going to start over. It's February. That's why I have a wonderful second VP that can remind me about what the actual date is today. So here we go. Good morning. The February 24th board meeting is hereby called to order. First, I want to ask Ruth to explain how to access interpretation. Ruth?
Yes, thank you. The following is an announcement to on-site participants requiring simultaneous interpreting. Si se ha unido a la reunión de hoy en la sala de juntas de SANDAG y necesita interpretación al español, por favor diríjase a la recepción del piso 8 y solicite un receptor. Simplemente sostenga el auricular del receptor junto a su oído y la interpretación comenzará automáticamente. If you're joining us today in the SANDAG boardroom and need interpreting services, please check out a receiver from the receptionist on the 8th floor. Simply hold the receiver earpiece to your ear and the interpreter will come on automatically. And this is an announcement for remote participants. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, por favor, desplácese a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, que es el globo terráqueo, y seleccione su idioma. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en celular o tableta, presione los puntos suspensivos, luego Interpretation y luego el idioma. To use the interpreting feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are located. Click on the interpretation icon, which is the world, and select your language. If you are joining using the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone or tablet, please press the ellipses, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and start this meeting with the, I'm sorry, no, hold on one second. We're going to first do the Kumeyaay land acknowledgement. For millennia, the Kumeyaay people have been a part of this land. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy, we promote this balance and harmony, and we find inspiration from this land, the land of the Kumeyaay. Now, if you could please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible. All right, so before we get started, I want to welcome Councilmember Melanie Birkenholt from Carlsbad to the SANDAG Board of Directors. And then I also want to share with all of you that I've received a few emails requesting items on the board agenda that they want, folks need some clarification on some of these items. And so the process by which board members can propose items to be added for future agendas as well. So I just want to remind folks that when someone asks for an item to be added to the agenda, it needs to go through a process to determine whether or not it will be added. And that process is part of our board policies that states the executive committee is responsible for setting the board agenda. So I want to make sure that we are, that all of the requests are recognized and that we're able to review them and considered, and that the executive committee takes the time to figure out where in the future agendas those items may go. So in addition to emailing me, I would like to ask all board members to please copy the clerk of the board. It's really important that we keep track and also just to make sure that we continue to make sure that we have a transparent process, a process where we are able to hold everyone accountable so that we're keeping track of what we're supposed to be doing and that we are doing it in accordance with board policy number 1. And so I'm just going to ask legal counsel to share with everyone just a reminder of a refresher, because I know there's a lot of you board members. Some of you have been here for a long time, but I just want to make sure that it's clear what that process is as we're moving forward. So.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Everything you've said is accurate and fairly thorough. The important thing to underscore is that it is the executive committee that holds the authority to set agenda for the board. And Board Policy 1 recognizes that delegated authority from you to the executive committee to set those agendas. It does also recognize that if you want something to be on an agenda, the chairwoman is a conduit to express your desire, your request to put something on an agenda, really to have the executive committee consider your request so that the executive committee can consider that. Some of you may be on executive committee, but if you're not, you can certainly attend that meeting too and speak to your proposed inclusion of an item on a future board agenda. But ultimately, they vote on that agenda. No one member can compel an item to be on the agenda. The chair cannot compel an item to be on the agenda. The executive committee is the one who sets it.
Thank you so much. So I just want to make sure everybody understands the process. Feel free to forward that information and we will move forward with identifying when and if those items are, brought forward. When we're going to be making these decisions as we move forward. All right, with that, before we get started, today's staff also received a lot of questions, particularly on item number 4. And so this item, so that everybody knows, went through the chief of the sheriffs and public safety committee. And there was a lot of work that was done beforehand, but however, because there's been so many questions on this item number 4, I've asked SANEC staff to come back at a later date with this item so that we can make a very informed decision and all of you have the information that you need. So I want to make sure everybody has the details. If you have any other concerns about item 4, please let us know. But we want to make sure that you have everything that you need to make an informed decision.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes,
Can I speak to that real quick?
Of course.
The reason why I'm going to speak to this is so that if people have questions that might give them some ideas. George and I were talking this morning about this because they were thinking about like ancillary reports that each of us get at council meetings or for our council, like, the annual arrest reports and crime reports, things of that nature. But you might think of questions about how is ARGIS used, and it's used every single day by your law enforcement officers, and I mean multiple times a day. So some of the questions might be, what is it they use it for? Because most people don't know that. In order to support our law enforcement officers, whether it's sheriffs or the police, you might want to know about that. So things to think about when you're asking questions.
Thank you. And I think we also have San Marcos. Who else wanted? I think that's it. Okay. Appreciate that. We have a few items on this week's agenda. And so I'm going to do my best to keep things moving because we have a really, really big agenda. So as a reminder, once we pull the voting slides up, the speaker queue is disabled. So please note that if you would like to speak once the voting slide has been pulled up, I will need you to raise your hand. I'm also going to ask audience members who are interested in providing public comment to raise your hand virtually or submit a speaker slip no later than the end of any staff presentation on the item. And with that, we're going to start with non-agenda public comments. Francesca, are there any public comments?
Thank you, Chair. Before we go to the public comment, would be all right with you if I do the roll call? All right, thank you. For the city of Carlsbad, Councilmember Burkholder. Present. For the city of Chula Vista, Councilmember Cardenas.
Cardenas present.
For the city of Coronado, Councilmember Duncan.
Present, thank you.
For the county of San Diego, Chairwoman Vargas.
Present.
Also for the county of San Diego, Supervisor Anderson.
Present.
For the city of Del Mar, Councilmember Drucker.
Here.
For the city of El Cajon, Mayor Wells.
Here.
For the city of Encinitas, Mayor Kranz.
Here.
For the city of, Escondido, Mayor White.
Present.
For the city of Imperial Beach, Councilmember Fisher.
Fisher here.
For the city of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Here.
For the city of Lemon Grove, Councilmember Gastel.
Here.
For the city of National City, Vice Mayor Molina.
Present.
The city of Oceanside is absent. For the city of Poway, Mayor Voss.
Here.
For the city of San Diego, Councilmember Campillo.
Here.
For the city of San Diego, Vice Chair Elo Rivera.
Present.
For the city of San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
Jones here.
For the city of Santee, Mayor Minto.
Here.
For the city of Solana Beach, Second Vice Chair Hebner.
Here.
For the city of Vista, Mayor Franklin.
Here.
For advisory members for Caltrans, Executive Director Diarda.
Here.
For Metropolitan Transit System, Mayor Pro Tem Leyva Gonzalez.
Here.
For North County Transit District, Councilmember Edson.
Present.
For Imperial County, Supervisor Aguirre.
It's Supervisor Escobar. but
Oh, my
present.
apologies, Supervisor Escobar. For the U.S. Department of Defense, Executive Director Keck. For the Port of San Diego, Mr. Stuyvesant.
Here.
The San Diego County Water Authority is absent. The San Diego County Regional Airport Authority is also absent. For Mexico, Deputy Consul General Luna. And for the San Diego County Tribal Chairmen's Association, Chairwoman Pinto. Thank you. And that concludes the roll call, and I'll move on to public comments. For our first public commenter will be Catherine Rhodes, who will be followed by Tim Bylash.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes, and what I wanted to talk about is the Neil Good Day Center and the hepatitis A cases that are coming back to kill the homeless again. It's mainly due to a lack of restrooms and hand washing stations. And for example, the way the 20 people died before, homeless people died before, was because the city of San Diego refused to give permits to the county to allow emergency hand washing stations, which they never needed because of course, it's legal to put hand washing stations anywhere you want during an emergency. So the county, thank goodness, just came out with a letter telling San Diego to put up porta potties. Thank goodness. That's something. But what I wanted to talk about was the Neil Good Day Center and how this is the bathroom that tens of thousands of people use every year. It's closed now on weekends. It's closed on Saturday and Sunday. This used to be a place where people could go to the bathroom, take showers, store their property. They took out all the storage area out of the Neil Good Day Center because they said costs are rising. We can only do it Monday through Friday. So St. Vincent de Paul, costs are rising. It's like their fault. And so nobody can come up with $300,000. Excuse me. $300,000 to keep it open on weekends. And so the solution is the county's $650 million in ARPA funds. For example, when they put their county put their project, their plan together, 312 of the 650 million, or 48%, was going to go to COVID-19 relief. But instead of using the ARPA funds, they use the FEMA funds, they use the CARES Act funds, and state and local grants. So this money, $312 million, was going to go to that. I'm asking the county and the city to open up the Neil Good Day Center because tomorrow will be the second weekend it's been closed, and it's not there during the hepatitis crisis that we have these bathrooms for the homeless closed. It's insane. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Tim Bylash. And after Tim, we will go to our online folks and start with Mary D.
Thank you, Board. I appreciate being here again, and I just want to also express appreciation for the diverse talents and experiences that everyone brings to this board. Can I get the video set up? I'm online.
I'm sorry, Tim, I don't have a video for you.
I'm on the
Can you pause it?
website.
Oh, my apologies. Oh, okay.
I
will,
live up near the racetrack in Del Mar, and been here in San Diego for 15 years. And I'd like to show you a video if we can see it. One second, little adjustment maybe. Can you see that? I don't see it.
You're not sharing it.
It's not being shared in person. Well, that's a shame. This is a subject I brought. I'm going to play it here for the online.
No, Tim, you can share your screen still.
Oh, that's very good.
Are you into Zoom?
I am.
Zoom? Share screen?
Thank you. Apologies to the audience. Very good. Thank you. So I want to show this video. This is the south side of the San Diego Lagoon, just south of the racetrack, almost out to the beach, the Pacific Ocean. And a lot of this damage is going pretty quickly. It's just a walk through a part of it, but you'll see most of this damage is new. After this was taken on the 19th of this month in the city of Del Mar. And you can see the extreme storm damage after the last a bunch of storms that came through. Now, I brought this to the Sandag before, and I also want to apologize to the executives of Sandag. This board runs Sandag. What you make a priority is what this board makes Sandag do. And they're mostly engineers. Now, I'm a physician and a scientist, but I'm also a citizen that lives here in San Diego for over 15 years. And when I took a walk here every day or several days, and I see with my own eyes the damage that climate is doing, I'm a little insulted by the shenanigans that go on with some of the political people who make input to this board. And I apologize for the anger because this is, to me, the number one priority of where I live is the climate damage that we're doing. And everything else should be secondary to, it's about our medical issues, health issues. It's about our homes washing in, our shores going. And I have had over the past year, not one single response from any person or agency about this particular problem. And I bring it to the board. It's not your job, but it is your opposition to this that concerns me. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Mary D., who will be followed by Blair Beekman. Mary, you can go ahead.
Hi, Francesca. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Mary D here. Another packed agenda after canceling your last meeting. When I inquired why the last one was canceled, I was told that, quote, the chairwoman determined that there was no time-sensitive business. So imagine my surprise when I discovered there was a pressing issue, that you were just 4 months away from being without an auditor and are now considering going with an outside consultant rather than your internal team, which you've developed, and who, by the way, have done a stellar job of digging in and holding you fiscally accountable. Fiscal stewardship and accountability are at the heart of organizational integrity. I urge you to hire an internal auditor replacement instead of an outside consultant, which would likely be far more expensive, as well as them then being beholden to the hand of the agency feeding their contract. I see that you have an upcoming meeting to rethink social housing. Not sure if this involves the creation of a new agency a la SB 1105, but the region does not need yet another government agency, particularly a finance authority that has the power to levy more taxes. The historical problems at the Housing Commission are but some reason to give pause to the creation of a new agency, but equally as troubling is the history of your own agency, from pivoting from promises made on Transnet tax that we're still paying on, to bad stewardship from your CEO and his use of taxpayer dollars for his upscale dining, to the lack of oversight that let millions of dollars slip through your fingers on the SR 125 tollway. Your agency is a prime example of exactly why the creation of any new regional entity is absolutely not in the best interest of taxpayers. Focus on getting your own house in order first to become good stewards of taxpayer money. Another bureaucratic agency is absolutely not the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Blair Beekman. And after Blair, we do have one additional public commenter in the room. Pam, I'll call on you after Blair.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Happy meeting today. If my Zoom starts to sound a little funny, mention something, I'll try to adjust. I wanted to first offer, in attending a few of the Sandag meetings this month, it's been an important part for me to be more considering the use of ride sharing ideas. Yourselves have been talking about, different programs and the importance of the future of a subway system this month. And for myself, it just really hit home that the ideas of rideshare programs and say learning how to address, that bus drivers are not on the job as much, like say on the weekends. There's job loss. There's people not being at the job, basically. And if those sort of issues with bus issues can be taken care of and talking with union people about those sort of things, I think those are really small things that can help develop a really important future for public transit, mass transit use in San Diego that I'm really interested in as we wait for the larger subway project to get underway. I think it's these small things that can really be of help. And then I hope you guys will be considering and just things to think about. And thanks. Yeah, with that said, I wanted to comment with my remaining time on, oh my gosh, I only have 20 seconds remaining. I thought I had much more time. I think I'll just save this for consent calendar time. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Our final speaker will be Pam. You can go ahead and step up to the podium.
Hi, I'm Pam. Mileage tax, road use fee, road use charge, road use time, road use fine, punishment, a penalty. No matter the wording, SANDAG, most of you folks, not all of you on the board, are willing to rob county residents of their voice and their vote by preventing them from voting on this tax. SANDAG will rob county residents of their independence and freedom to drive their vehicles as they so choose. SANDAG wishes to punish the county residents and force them into public transportation, including your minor children on public transportation alone with strangers when they go to school or wherever. SANDAG would add this mileage tax in addition to other taxes paid by county residents, the gas tax per gallon, the DMV vehicle fees, toll road fee, and sales tax. Just to mention a few, we're not even getting into property tax. SANDAG presents, some of you folks on the board, presents as caring about the climate when in reality they want to control and change the behavior, their words, in the daily lives of county residents. SANDAG is willing to continue oppression of those who have escaped the oppression in their own countries. A few folks on this board, one in particular, is very familiar with oppressive tactics. However, non-residents, tourists from other cities, from anywhere, from across the border, would not have to pay this mileage tax for the time they spend in this county. SANDAG is considering many methods to count the mileage: vehicle odometer reading, the vehicle's computer, data transfer, vehicle insurance, paying at the pump, annual smog checks. Who here has an annual smog check? Only if you have an old car. And perhaps an electronic device installed in the vehicles. SANDAG may have a hidden agenda, that of the 15-minute cities, to control and restrict movement of county residents beyond a 15-minute driving distance, which again forces residents into public transportation and are walking everywhere within a 15-minute radius. SANDAG should take this show directly to the county residents and be truthful and educate them on the mileage tax. Hassan, you were
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry, your time has expired. Chair, that concludes the public commenters.
To our CEO report.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Good morning, board members. A couple of things to clarify. In the Youth Opportunity Pass, you received an email from me. I'm going to clarify it again. This board approved an 18-month Youth Opportunity Pass. It has been very successful by all means. We have identified additional federal CMAQ money. Next month in the budget, you will see a proposal to extend this youth pass for another year or another 12 months. If you approve the budget next month, an MOU will be signed to extend this program further. Furthermore, in addition to the fact that our youth 18 or younger can take all of our transit system, both the North County Transit and the MTS, we are going to create opportunities for outlying areas that don't have access to as much access to transit. As I spoke last week, speaking to Supervisor Anderson about maybe a pilot in areas where transit can be accessible. Our goal and my goal will be to recommend to this board that not only extend the existing youth pass 18 or younger 1 year, but also to identify funding for a 24 and under. My goal, and I hope I can identify the funding to present to you in this budget, is to identify enough money to start the pilot 24 and under with the partnership with NCTD, MTS, and the County of San Diego. So look forward to the budget discussion next month, but the youth pass is successful, continue to be, and we are identify funding to be presented to you next month to extend it another 12 months. On the regional transportation plan, as you know, the board directed us to remove the road user charge from the plan. Just as promised, we'll report on the progress every month. Progress is good. We are in the process of finalizing the plan, doing the supplemental environmental impact report, and our goal is still to submit this plan without the road user charge to the state of California by the summer. The regional transportation plan continue to be implemented, and I want to compliment the amazing team here, the 400 people, hardworking people that work every day on behalf of the 3.3 million San Diegans, bringing federal and state funds. Today, you're going to see on the agenda the local streets and road funds that we received, $2 million. Additionally, we received about $5 million for the university bikeway. So this amazing team continue to deliver on behalf of San Diegans. So the regional transportation plan is on schedule as directed by the board to come back to you shortly and be out on the street for public review. On the Central Mobility Hub, next month, you're also going to see a report that talks about how we connect rail to the airport. A lot of work has been done, millions of dollars worth of work, good work. That's going to allow you as a board of directors to move forward, direct staff to move forward in the environmental work. So finally, we can connect our airport to rail. On Otay Mesa 2, it is an amazing project for everyone in San Diego. A couple of months ago, the chairwoman and Mayor Gloria, council president were in Mexico City, signing a historic toll agreement on behalf of San Diego with the Mexican government. Since then, we broke ground on site preparation, but there's a lot of work yet to be done. This board is going to hear very shortly and take action on making sure we can borrow money to continue this project moving. I also want to alert you that the cost of building the facility has gone up significantly since we spoke to you last. Continue to work with Custom Patrol and General Service Administration to make sure the federal government is ready to receive this amazing facility once it's built. On the Del Mar Bluff, the California Transportation Commission on December 4th allocated $152 million out of the $300 million we received. We're starting the environmental and design work. This is serious business. This is a corridor that the National Secretary of Transportation came so firsthand. The President of the United States mentioned how important it is. Our ultimate goal is to make sure a trip from San Diego to LA Union Station doesn't take 4 hours, but 2 hours. Simple things to do in San Diego. Moving the track of the bluff, straightening the Miramar curve, double tracking, replacing the old bridges. This is all, the work has begun. And I want to thank all of our partners on that work. Also in the next month's budget, you're going to see a proposal from staff of allocating money to start the planning and environmental work for the Purple Line and the reconfiguration of the Blue Line. The Purple Line will be the first subway line in San Diego. It will be an amazing line because it's going to connect people to their jobs, people to their opportunities. And I look forward to seeing this work started so we can look for an amazing transit opportunity in this region. We're continuing to work on big data and data portals. We continue to be recognized in like I think Mayor Minto mentioned, when it comes to data, and Argos, which is part of this agency, provide a service that's unique to Sandag. I continue to be amazed by this agency and its staff, and they will have nothing but my admiration and work. Chairwoman, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Francesca, do we have any public comment?
Thank you, Chairwoman. We do have one public comment in the room, Catherine Rhodes. If you'd like to go ahead and step up to the podium. And after that, we'll move over to Zoom and start with Karina Contreras.
I need help to play a video. Hi, this is, here it is. So here I am.
Can you promote her? You trying to share this one right here?
Yes.
Okay.
And now we'll figure out how to do this.
Yeah, she needs to promote you.
While we're helping Catherine get set up, just if any other members of the public have media they'd like to share, if they could just let me know in advance so that we can help you get that set up before the public comment time starts. I think maybe we can go to the online commenters while we're getting set up. Okay. Karina, we'll go to you first, and then we'll go over to Mary D, and then we'll come back to Catherine.
Hello, thank you so much. My name is Karina Contreras. I'm the Transportation Policy Advocate for Climate Action Campaign. And I just wanted to touch upon something that the CEO said, which is a pilot for non-transit areas and looking specifically at Supervisor Anderson's district. And I want to say that, you know, is there an effort that Sandag is making to map transit deserts? The reason that I asked this question is that there's a lot of residents throughout San Diego, the San Diego region, have seen the success of the Youth Opportunity Program. Unfortunately, not everybody has access to transit. And, you know, even looking at areas along the 56 corridor, SR 56, a lot of those neighborhoods do not have transit. So it's music to my ears to hear that there are pilots being considered, because I think when we're looking at equity, ensuring that our youth can connect to different activities, that they can maybe leave home and not be stuck at home. If they don't have parents, you know, that can take them everywhere, you can free up some time for parents, and they can be exposed to so much more recreational activities, extracurricular activities, economic opportunities. So I really would love to see, you know, a transit desert mapping project, and look at use that data to identify different pilots that we can put forward for youth. The other thing I want to say is that I am a little concerned hearing about this conspiracy about a 15-minute city. The concept is that you can get to resources within 15 minutes, not that you're kept from going beyond anything that's 15 minutes. So it's just a way to build smarter. And I don't understand why we're trying to force people to stay in their cars. We should be building more opportunities for folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Mary D. And then after Mary, we'll go back to Catherine.
Hi, Mary D here. Again, to state my grave opposition to the path you've chosen to pivot to with your new regional plan, as well as any road usage charge or tax. You need to complete the many projects you listed, Dolores, to vote for the Transnet tax. What also seems to escape many people's memory is this agency having knowingly put forth a bond measure listing inflated revenue, further leading voters to strongly believe that those listed projects would in fact get completed. While you can throw your hands in the air and point fingers at the prior administration, that does not negate the ethical duty you have to taxpayers who trustingly supported your big ask back in 2004. Item 5 today, the 94-125 interchange, is a prime example, the details of which I'll get to later, but suffice it to say that you continue to prove that certain segments of the county are on the low end of the totem pole when it comes to their safety and well-being, and that continued death and injury in East County is an acceptable price to pay to move your other vanity projects forward. Lastly, I feel compelled to ground your CEO back to both fiscal reality as well as the premise of stewardship. His recent comments about the agency having, quote, the greatest reputation when it comes to innovation and new concepts, as well as, quote, building a world-class organization requiring state-of-the-art systems, smacks of being fueled by ego and entitlement, not fiduciary duty or integrity. Your current funding mechanisms listed for the plan are magical thinking and are not based in reality. I am here to affirm that your CEO is not Robin Leach and that you need to pare down your $163 billion champagne wishes and caviar dreams plan to a far more modest hybrid plan that meets the needs of all the county. This includes freeway lanes and improvements. Ground your future planning in reality and honor the commitments you made. The public trust you eroded in pivoting to the regional plan will come back to bite you when you try to fund any future plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now we'll go back to Catherine.
This is a video that San Francisco, you can't see it maybe. Okay, this is a video that San Francisco made when they wanted to get money for their seawall. And so what it does is it shows all the liquefaction on the seawall and how your whole entire area, especially the Navy area, is going to be destroyed if we ever have an earthquake. Except for, of course, the county building, because the county was built on a bathtub foundation, so was the port building. And so the other thing I wanted to well, here it goes. Here goes what happens during liquefaction. So this is what's going to happen adjacent the county building, but not on the county building. And so the solution is on another document. Hopefully I'll have it. I'll just kind of go to the side. The solution here, or I can't show it, is this memorandum from the FAA from 2001 that allows for airport revenue diversion for transit projects to the airport. That's non-exclusive to the airport. This is a huge giant change that nobody from the airport authority told you about. And so the solution, of course, is what I call my La Playa plan that I'm putting forward as a alternative in the supplemental EIR. And what it would do, it would take out all your liquefiable soils and create underground space so that we could create, let's just say, a 40 by 40 corridor underground from the Mexican border all the way up. One level could be, you could give it to Elon Musk. The second level could be for transit or whatever you want. This is an opportunity. And the wonderful thing is that it won't cost Sandag any money. You'll get money coming in from two different sources. The first source, I think what I always call it, this is really a reclamation project in the order of the size of, let's say, the Hoover Dam. And what you'll do is you will create underground cisterns so that we could capture all the stormwater. Think of all that water that came here that just went into the ocean because we don't have a plan to capture it. So my plan, my La Playa plan actually does so much for so many, and it would be so great for the military also.
Thank
for
you.
them
I'm so sorry, but your time has expired. And Chair, that concludes the public commenters on this item.
Thank you very much. Mayor Kratz.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Chair. I wanted to say that I've been a little bit surprised by the announcements about the extension of the Youth Opportunity Pass because I think that it's important that before we are making those announcements, we have MOUs in place with both transit agencies and are certain of where we're going to get the funding. And so I just wanted to express, while I fully support the Youth Opportunity Pass program, I think it's incumbent upon this board to make decisions about how the money is spent before we're hitting social media and making announcements about the extension of something. I'm not sure what this board is here for, if in fact we're going to just be able to make decisions without including the board in that process. So wanted to make that statement. I've seen emails from the executive director that alluded to some statements that were made at MTS. It wasn't clear what the issues were that MTS had. I know NCTD hasn't made any decisions about signing the MOU, but I think it'd be good to have the executive directors of both transit agencies here to have a conversation about this funding and the extension of the program, which by all measures seems to be quite successful. And again, I support the program, but I think I know it's our fiduciary obligation to ensure that the money that we're allocating for the purpose of extending the program is indeed available and the priority of the board.
Oh, go ahead. It's not showing up, but no problem.
I'm sorry. Okay, I actually had a question about that too, Director Okada. So do we, because a letter came through from NCTD yesterday, my question is, are we doing a press conference? And I too am supportive of youth opportunity passes, but are we doing a press conference on that?
If you approve it next month, we will do a press
Oh,
conference.
okay. I'm sorry. I thought for some reason it was today and I was thinking, wait, why are we
There
doing
is a
that?
press conference today about the program, right? Yeah, it's a different issue. Go ahead, Colleen. We are having a press conference today.
So we did reach 5 million rides on using the youth opportunity pass. And so that is what is being announced today at a press conference. So that's it. It's not about an extension of the program or anything. It's just the number of rides that have been provided since this was initiated.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to double check on that. And then I did have some questions about I had received a response back regarding the bus stopover project. And it just said that the response was a portion of the property has been purchased and Sandag is working with MTS as we consider the balance of the land over time and potential interim improvements for a stopover. The stopover is included in the downtown San Diego Mobility Hub, which is in the 2021 regional plan. And it is more specifically called out in the regional transportation improvement plan, the RTIP, which is the 5-year funding. So I'm a little confused only because I did find the Navwar site was originally the Central Mobility Hub. And then I looked in the RTIP and there's actually two different items. They're actually two different things. It said ID SAN 129, which is the downtown multi-use and bus stopover facility. And then SAN 258, which is the Central Mobility Hub, but those are two different things. So my question is, in the regional plan, as we're updating that with the removal of the wreck, is the modeling happening with the Navwar site or the downtown Central Mobility site, or is it both? And if there is a material change, I feel like that should be something that we would discuss. And so maybe you could help me out on understanding that. And this might not be something that you would be able to respond to off the cuff. I was up until midnight reading through this, trying to figure out what's what. And so I had to go through both plans and it's over 500. Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. I'm going to try to be as concise and clear in this. Those are two separate projects. So the downtown stopover project is about providing a place for the buses to lay over that are coming into downtown San Diego. And if you're at all familiar with the situation today, the buses are stopping on the street. The drivers have no place to rest. The curb space is extremely limited. And so the long term plan has been for some time. And by previous boards allocating funding to actually purchase land so the buses would have a place to lay over. We have been able to environmentally clear part of that property to look at some sort of interim solution where we look for the additional funds to buy the rest of the property. So there could be a full block there. We could build a permanent facility that could also potentially have some building along with it. So that's that piece. That's not meant to be the central mobility hub, but it's within this whole kind of mobility hub influence area. The central mobility hub is still, the exact location is still being decided. And that was one of the things the executive director mentioned, that we're looking at the alternatives and plan to bring forward a report to you that looks at whether it's still Navwar, Santa Fe Depot, or could it be at the downtown stopover, or could it be at a civic center at the city of San Diego? So that work is still underway. So that's why you see the two budget items in there. As far as the amendment to the regional plan that's underway, I think we made it very clear here to this board, in order to meet the timeline that you asked of us, there was a very limited scope in the work that could be done. And so that was, as simply as possible, removing the road usage charge, updating the funding as a result of that, and then running the model, assuming all things constant. There's just, otherwise, once you start pulling things out and changing things, it pulls the whole plan apart. So for us to do this very focused amendment that you had requested, we laid out very specifically that that is the scope of work that's being completed. And then I think your fourth question is, how does this play out in the 2025 regional plan, the next regional plan? So we will have a lot more information once we complete the study on the Central Mobility Hub. And that then will become part of the planning efforts that we bring forward to you later this year. So hopefully I've been able to answer, it seems like there's 4 parts. What's the Central Mobility Hub? How does it relate to the downtown stopover and the purpose of that? And then what assumptions are being made in the plan amendment compared to what would be done in the 2025 plan?
So I guess, yeah, so the downtown San Diego Mobility Hub in the regional transportation plan is not necessarily the central mobility hub. Okay, that's where I was kind of going, well, that doesn't make sense. And why are there 2 projects and where's all this funding coming from? So when we get the, so we haven't voted on where that central mobility hub is going to be located. When we get that, can we also get a breakdown specifically where that, because I know we've already spent $20 million on it, which is a lot of money. I think we also reallocated possibly some more money on that. I think it was over and above. No, we haven't allocated more than 20 million. So of the 20 million, if we could get maybe an update on that as to where that money's gone and how much is left, and then what our next steps are to try to figure out where that's going, that would probably be
I
helpful.
think Mayor Jones, just you did ask for that, and it come to this board where this money is spent, but we'll be more than happy to provide the board with another presentation where that money is spent.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember.
Thank you very much. I wanted to echo and amplify Councilmember Karina Contreras's comment about having a transit desert map. It's a fantastic idea. Defining what it means to be in a desert of transit is going to be an important notion within that. Perhaps some of this map already exists. And I'll point out that once we have that map, we'll know the places that we need more parking goes in order to make some of those desert areas have access to a parking go that's maybe 10 to 15 minutes away by car. That'll be an important thing. And I want to thank you again for the emphasis on the Del Mar Bluff, straightening Miramar, and Rose Canyon. San Diego to LA in 2 hours will be fantastic. And I'll point out that from Oceanside, it's pretty much equidistant driving right now to the San Diego airport versus the Irvine airport. And that fast train that we'll get from San Diego to LA will also get us to the John Wayne Airport in Irvine. Thank you.
I really love that idea. I'm wondering if that is something that we could task, and if appropriate, to the Social Equity Committee to begin to address this transit desert map that they can later present to us, because there is such good representation from community on that committee. What do you think?
We can do that.
Well, I was asking the council member.
I think it's a fantastic idea.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and ask for that information and then they can bring it forth to us. Thank you. And
Chair
Yes.
Vargas, if I could, since that issue came up, I just hope that when they do that, they also include land use. Because I'm afraid we create these transit deserts by our land use practices. So let's keep that in mind as well. That's why we have emphasis on developing transit or residences, new housing close to transit centers. But I have a fear that we will deal with the transit deserts and at the same time create them through our land use practices at the county and city levels. Thank you.
thank you, council member.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for the warm welcome. I too echo the Youth Pass support of Mayor Krantz and Mayor Jones. I'm just curious, I heard you say that we had 5 million riders, which is fantastic. What other metrics? Sorry, go ahead.
It's 5 million trips.
Trips. Okay.
Trips.
I was thinking that was incredibly large.
Yes,
So
yes,
thank you for,
trips.
thank you for that. What other metrics are we using for success in that program? And then I have one other comment, that's all.
I have to look at that. We have our whole team monitoring. So ridership is a big one, but we can look at what the other metrics are. I don't
Okay,
know.
and thank you for your patience. I'm new.
No, I think that's a great question. I think because the ridership has gone up and we're going to be sharing some of that information today, it would be probably appropriate for us to send you the team to send a memo to all the board members to see where we're at with the youth opportunity passes and how successful it has been and where the ridership is coming from. And
Thank you for that. I
you with that.
appreciate that.
All right.
And just regarding the stopover project, I did also receive the information that this fall you approved the federal environmental clearance and completed a purchase of a portion of the property from San Diego County Bar Association. Sandag is currently working to complete the purchase, which is exactly what Mayor Jones said. I'm just wondering how much was that property that we're starting to work on, but now we have to complete the purchase of?
Go ahead, Ryan, if you could.
Ryan just showed me 18 fingers. Is that what you said? So 8. Okay.
18 fingers. Thank you.
So let me just, on the stopover facility, first of all, buses cannot continue to park on the streets. We have our rapid buses plus local buses. They have to find a place, drivers have to find a place. So there is no question that we need a stopover facility. The board made a decision, this board, not this board, but Sandag board, previously to purchase. We just 2 months ago signed the lease on the other part of the property we bought, and we still have I think it's 1/3 of the property to be purchased. The idea of the stopover is not just for the buses to stop, but it's also to cover and redevelop the area, build housing or maybe hopefully offices for this agency, permanent offices, so we don't have to pay lease and come talk about lease. But just the point here is the stopover has to happen and has to happen in downtown because that's where the buses stop. That is where both the local and rapid buses. This board made a decision. It's going to cost $18 million, like Ryan just indicated. It's probably going to go up and down depending on the market. That depend when we finalize the purchase of the last property. We're working with our transit agency, MTS, in that regard. But our goal is to have this property owned by the public shortly, and therefore. Not only the buses will find homes, but also we could look at other uses for this facility.
Okay, so help me understand, if I heard you correctly, you're saying that the stopover would include potential Sandag offices and residential areas. So it sounds like you think people would be amenable to the idea of living above a stopover for buses.
The purpose of the stopover is for buses to stop. But that doesn't mean that you cannot have another uses for it. Right now, we need to find a place for both the local buses and the rapid buses we're running in this region to stop. They cannot continue to stop on the street. And for drivers to have a rest area. That's the bottom line. What we do with it later, that's a different discussion. You're going to have to discuss and figure out. But
I don't see any other comments. With that, I'm going to go ahead and move over to the consent agenda. Francesca, are there any public comments on the consent agenda?
Thank you, Chair. We do have a few comments on the consent agenda. First, we'll start with Felix Lafuente in the room. And then we'll move to Zoom and start with Blair Beekman.
Buenos días, muchas gracias. My name is Felix Lafuente. I am the grants writer and manager at Home of Guiding Hands, located in El Cajon. I am here to support item 8 and would like to thank the staff and specifically Zach Rivera for his help and support with this grant. Yeah, I'll be in the audience if there are any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Blair Beekman, who will be followed by Mary D.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. You have 2 items on your consent calendar, your legislative tasks for the year 2023 and an auditor's report on current conditions within Sandag. I wanted to first comment on the legislative calendar for this year. And just to quickly offer that a real good luck, that it's my personal feeling that we have a really good 2024 and 25 planned for ourselves for local California cities. Good community projects are on the way. And I think it's a really interesting, hopeful time. And if we practice well in this upcoming year, and I think we can ask things like possible upcoming recession ideas, we can ask to stave them off and ask for what's more our positive selves. And if we ask for those sort of things and work hard in this year, it'll make 24 and 25 a really good years for ourselves, really interesting years, I think. Thank you for that. And to quickly try to offer on the audit issues. I attended the executive committee meeting in the beginning of the month. And I think all sides had really interesting points of views how to address the issue. And I'd like to respect the current auditor who will be in the office until the end of June and what you guys can work out in the meantime in that process. I think to offer an accountability process through the months is important as well. And so someone offered the ideas of maybe placing where current auditing questions are at on consent calendar items, just as a way for the board persons to ask. If they want to ask questions during that time, we should allow that sort of space to happen and not feel intimidated to not ask those questions during that time. To make it accessible, just the simple things to make it public and accessible during this time can be helpful in figuring things out. Thanks a lot.
Our next speaker will be Mary D, who will be followed by Chris Olson.
Thank you, Francesca. Mary D here. I'm asking you to prioritize and fast track this is item 5, State Route 94 and 125. Fast track this project. East County has been waiting a decade or more for this project to break ground and move forward. It is a choke point that causes accidents and congestion, and your own documents state that this project would reduce the volume of traffic exiting on Spring Street by 15,000 vehicles a day. Yet we are now told that costs for the third port of entry have risen significantly, possibly, I think I heard at one of the meetings, 250 million to 450 million. And yet you are finding money to complete that. So it then becomes a matter of political will and priorities. People crossing from Mexico, yes. County residents crashing, getting injured and dying when 125 backs up, not so much. You need to make this project a priority. And while we're at it, I'm also asking you and Caltrans to make public the report from the findings of contaminated groundwater. Area residents deserve to know the details about that as well. Thank you.
Your next speaker will be Chris Olson, who will be followed by Catherine Rhodes.
Hi, good morning, board members, and thank you. My name is Chris Olson. I'm Chief of Staff at Jewish Family Service of San Diego. Just offering comments on item number 8. We want to express appreciation to Sandag staff for the specialized transportation program process. This Cycle 12 funding will expand the services that JFS provides through our On the Go program to be able to provide nearly 80,000 rides. This service is vital to helping people stay in their homes by connecting them to medical appointments, socialization, and daily tasks. And we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Catherine Rhodes. And Catherine will be our final speaker.
Hi, this is Catherine Rhodes, and this is the new 2021 Alcris Priolo map that shows an active fault going right through your bus stopover facility. When the map was first out by the California Geologic Society, I gave them more information and they changed the map. They changed the map actually for the Navy Broadway complex also, and for a few other areas. But this map here shows an active fault going right through your site, and you guys bought the property. Spent money without doing proper due diligence. And proper due diligence is a fault investigation. And what you guys did is like a preliminary fault investigation. And what they found is there was no active, they could not find the active fault. But a previous report found the active fault. In fact, there was going to be affordable housing at that site. And then the people backed out because I assume they found the active fault. There's a report that found it. So what Sandag tries to say, and downtown people try to say in the port and everybody, is that you have, and this isn't within the downtown special study zone, plus the Alcris Priolo zone. And so the law says you have to assume active faulting, and you have to prove that there's no fault. But what they did instead is they presumed there is no faulting. It's like the opposite of the law. And so I've asked for an audit of this, and this is part of my audit request for you guys to bring in the solution. Super easy. You bring in the Caltrans Seismic Technical Advisory Board, similar to when Caltrans did the Coronado Tunnel Technical Advisory Panel in 2006. I think that you should bring it back. And this fault also would be a fault that would be very close to the county courthouse where, you know, they say that it's not related to fault movement, but you're literally doing this. I think it's insane. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That concludes the public commenters.
Thank you very much. If a board member, just a reminder, if any of the board members have, I have actually two. I have the vice chair first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was going to move the consent agenda. I do have one. There's one thing I noticed, I believe, in the minutes. So this is item 4. Item 3. The approval of minutes. Item 11 from the minutes. I think the account of the motion that failed, the allocation of the vote is flipped. The motion did fail, but I think it failed with 62.5% of the weighted votes supporting and 37.5 opposed. So wanted to make sure that the minutes accurately reflected that.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'll make sure that's corrected and we'll repost.
Thank you. And with that correction made, I'm happy to move the consent agenda, Chair.
Okay, so we have a motion and I'm happy to second. And then we have Council. So just
I wanted to pull in. Sorry, Chair. I wanted to pull an item from consent to
okay, so
bifurcate it.
something's going on with your thing because you're not on the list, but I got you. So go ahead and.
Okay. So I wanted to pull item number 12, and then I wanted to make a comment so we could bifurcate that. And then I wanted to make a comment about item number 15. I did reach out to our outside independent auditor, and she did indicate that she would stay as long as we needed her to stay based on the stall in moving forward with recruitment on her on the
what you said on
the recruitment.
Oh, you
I
said
just wanted
on
to
the stall. I don't understand what that means.
that we did not move forward.
Okay, but nobody
yeah.
was stalling. So let's just be clear
Okay.
that that's not what happened because I think words matter. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, they certainly
right.
do. And we opposed what the audit committee had mentioned. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, the
while-
executive
while
board
we
made a
cut-
decision, but I understand your comments, so we're
Okay.
going to go ahead and move forward with that. Okay, anything else?
So can we, will the maker of the motion accept bifurcating item number 12
What is item number 12?
and the second?
Sure. Are you?
Sure, maybe we can pull it. Yeah.
Yeah. No problem. All right, so Councilmember.
Thank you. I was going to suggest an amendment to item 12 as well, so I'm glad we're pulling it. But while I'm speaking, I just wanted to say a few words about item number 8. That item came up before the Transportation Committee. And first of all, I really want to make all the new board members know how important specialized transportation is to our region, how it provides really critical transportation for those who really need it, that they can't take regular kinds of transportation. They need specialized vehicles and more importantly, a driver that understands the needs of these populations, that either disabled, senior, or whatever. So I think I really want to emphasize how important that is to our region. This is one of the good things that SANDAG does. So I think we need to emphasize that we distribute money, important money to provide critical transportation. That said, this year there were some issues with regards to distribution of the grants and the grants that are provided. The bottom line is we didn't have enough money. And that's why I'm going to suggest the amendment to item 12 on the consent agenda. And we're also going to relook at how these grants are evaluated and the funding distributed by the Transportation Committee's working group. And lastly, this is the work of the Transportation Committee, and I want to applaud Chair Vargas and Vice Chair Campillo for leading that charge this last year. And I think it's important that we go forward with that. But with that, that's my comment on item 8.
Thank you. And then I have council member.
Thank you. And I appreciate your comments on item number 8, but I would like to, if we can, pull that from the consent agenda.
You want to pull that from the agenda?
Oh, yeah, if you're okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Fine. We'll do item number 12. Number 8. Bear with me. All right, member Jules.
Chair, I just had a quick question. Earlier you mentioned about coming back to item.
We have a list, and so
Oh, I'm
on my
sorry.
list, I have council member Edson.
I haven't
I think it's
pushed the
Okay.
button.
So
Sorry.
just bear with me because your names are showing up on here. So yeah. Oh, Lisa. Go.
I just want to make it a comment on item 12. So when we're there, let me know when you're there.
All right. So then we're going to go ahead and remove that. Now, go ahead, sir.
Councilmember Fisher.
And then I'll come to Lemon Grove. Councilmember Fisher, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry. I just want to just clarification. Earlier you mentioned about bringing item number 4 back to a later date. Do we need to put that to a vote as well?
No, I pulled it out of the agenda. Do you want me to?
No, I just was just a point of clarification.
No, I thought, I went ahead and pulled it just because there was so much, there was so much information request that I can do that. But if you want to pull that item on here to make sure that it's documented, I'm happy to do that.
No, sorry, maybe I misspoke. I just meant that we vote to bring it back at a later date. So sorry
okay.
about that.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
You're asking good questions. So the process is when we pulled something and you might have not heard my comment, but so I was very clear at the beginning wherein I said, we're going to pull it because a lot of members asked for information. So we're going to provide that information and we're going to bring it back. That you might have not heard that piece, but it's totally fine. Happy to do that.
Thanks for clarifying.
You're welcome. All right, Lemon Grove.
It was the same thing that Imperial Beach had. Thank you.
Got it. With that, we have all of the items on the consent agenda. We have a motion except for items number 12 and number 8. So go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and I did the second, so we can go ahead and move forward with the vote. I mean, no, unless he wants to.
the record, could the Carlsbad representative verbally indicate what
Burkholder,
your vote
yes.
was? Thank you.
Thank you. And that motion does pass unanimously with those members present.
Thank you for that. One second. No, give me a minute. Okay, next, I'm going to go ahead and move on to Chair's report. Item 17A is an information report that summarizes.
I'm sorry, Chair, wouldn't we discuss? the
Yes,
item
but
then? Sorry.
we're going to put this at the end. So I'm running the meeting, just so everybody knows. I got you. I've done this many times. I've run a lot of different meetings, so if you can just bear with me. I have a process and I'm going to go ahead and move things forward unless there's any legal reasons why I should be taking item number 12 and 8 right now. I will do that.
In your discretion to take them as you see fit.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So now we're going to move on to Chair Report, item number 17A. It's an information report that summarizes all of the sub-regional appointments to our policy advisory committees and includes this year's appointments for the PAC chairs and the vice chairs. Item 17B includes any recommendations for the board of members serving on the audit committee and chair of our military working group. I want to thank Deputy Mayor Zito, Mayor Vasquez, and Councilmember Musgrove for your service on the audit committee for the last 2 years. The work that this committee does is so important, and I'm really looking forward to working more closely with the committee in the coming year to continue identifying how best to move this agency forward in service of the people of the San Diego region. So I appreciate that. And then, as many of you know, our independent auditor has announced her retirement, and I thought it was important to maintain some continuity on the committee so that we can make sure that we move forward while also allowing for new perspectives to be heard. For that reason, I'm recommending Deputy Mayor Zito and Councilmember Musgrove to continue in their roles while introducing Councilmember Drucker to the committee as well. Councilmember Drucker has been an elected official for over 20 years and has served on SANDAG for at least 5 of those years. He understands the importance of ensuring the integrity of the work that we do and has demonstrated his willingness and commitment to pursue improvements in operations, financial reporting, and internal controls identified through the agency's audit products. And also, Mayor Vasquez will continue to be an important voice on audit matters through her participation on the executive committee. And then again, want to thank her for her service. For the military working group, I'm really happy to recommend Deputy Mayor Steve Gobble for our next chair. And public safety is a top priority for the deputy mayor. So we value his interest and participation in our public safety committee. And I think he will bring great leadership in the working group this year. My goal for these appointments was to make sure that we provided a balance of viewpoints and experiences. And as I said at our first meeting this year, my vision is to create a united nonpartisan front within our region that is centered in equity, innovation, and economic prosperity. I hope that you're going to join me in supporting our fellow board members in these roles. And before we open up for any discussion, I'm going to ask Francesca if we have any comments on this item 17A.
Thank you, Chair. We have no public comments on this item.
Okay, any board member comments? Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and there's no discussion. We're going to have, is there a motion? Yeah, 17.
I'm sorry, I thought we were taking them separately. We do have a comment on 17B. My apologies.
Okay, so 17A was information and now we're going to do 17B. Is that fine? Okay, so no comments, public comments or member comments on 17A? So now we're going to go to 17B. So it's the actual appointment. So public comment?
Yes, thank you. I know Deputy Mayor Goebel wanted to make a comment. We have no other public comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for your support, your recommendation to work with the military working group. I'm looking forward to working with the great members there and certainly bringing forward the mutual interests that we have. And so thank you for your support.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion for 17B?
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you. Please vote. It's actually the hardest part of the job, trying to figure out the technology at Sandig.
Thank you. And that motion passes unanimously with those members that are present.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to our first report, item 18. Sam is going to share some good news with us. So I'm going to turn it over to Sam.
Good morning, board. So I'm very excited to be here this morning to share, as mentioned, some good news and to announce new safety planning funds for the region. And this is an action item. This is requesting that the board accept funds from Federal Highway Administration. But this item is a continuation of the board's commitment to safety for all roadway users in our region. This past July, the Sandag Board adopted Resolution 2023-02, and that was declaring the Vision Zero action as an integral and for safe and equitable transportation across our region, and also directed staff, thank you, to seek funding to advance safety planning in our region. This continued with member agencies providing letters of support to Sandag as we sought different funding options. Well, the U.S. Department of Transportation has announced that Sandag was successful in its Safe Streets and Roads for All grant application. In the following slides, I'll cover the funds themselves, features that we anticipate using those funds for, and then also what the future holds as we move forward on our next steps. So first up are funds. So this is a grant for $2.5 million federal dollars that's going to allow the region to significantly advance safety planning, producing a regional Vision Zero action plan, a local safety plan for a city, the city of Vista, and a tribal plan for the La Jolla Band of Luiseño Indians. This model of having a regional approach and local planning combines kind of the macro lens of a regional approach along with a close-up localized view. Coordinating those together gets the benefits of both scales and then can be replicated in other locations. A big thanks to Caltrans for providing significant matching funds, allowing the region to really fully leverage this federal grant opportunity. So that's all for the funding part. Now for actually getting into the features. And when I say features, I'm talking about what we anticipate getting from a Vision Zero action plan for the region. So on that, first will be that, the region has 17,000 miles of roadways. A lot of roadways. There's, as far as applying near-term improvements for safety across that 17,000 miles, it's not very feasible to go and do everything all at once. So we need a way to prioritize that. And a high injury network is a way to identify where safety enhancements will have the greatest need and will have the best impact as well. So that'll be one of the key deliveries of this product will be a high injury network. There'll also be identifying data gaps. So throughout our region, there are gaps both as far as mapping of where safety incidents are occurring, but also where there's going to be possibilities for greater analysis and insights on safety. The grant will also provide policy recommendations that Sandag and local agencies can then take the opportunity to incorporate into their processes, procedures, and programs for advancing safety in our region. All this work will be guided by a multidisciplinary advisory group, and this will span from members of active transportation advocates to first responders, from education sector to trauma centers. And this body is really a cornerstone of the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program, where they're applying a safe systems approach, where they're looking at different layers of safety. So they talked about safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe roads, and then post-crash care. So you have redundancy in your safety system. And lastly, the regional lens works really well for a network screening approach, but there's still need for local safety planning to address more localized point location details. This effort will create local plan templates that jurisdictions can use to create their own local safety plans that match the Safe Streets and Roads for All elements. For supporting the plan development for trend analysis and then plan performance monitoring, we'll be using a regional safety dashboard, which is currently under development. This dashboard will use demographic data, network data, and crash data from officers that arrive on scene of an incident. The traffic incident data that we're using is the statewide integrated traffic record system, otherwise known as SWITRS. Now, outreach and encouragement is a big part of Vision Zero, and we're going to take advantage of May, which is Bike Month. And so this is an opportunity also to mark your calendars. May 18th is Bike Anywhere Day, not just Bike to Work Day. It's a great opportunity to promote biking of all sorts, not just to your place of work, while celebrating new miles of bikeways that have been developed over the past year. Now for the future part, our next steps, where do we go from here? So upon board acceptance of these federal dollars, over the next month, staff will be coordinating with Federal Highway Administration on this new federal program and what the requirements are. We'll also follow that with executing a grant agreement with Federal Highway Administration, bringing those funds into the region and into the budgeting process, and that's when the real work begins. Our anticipated completion date for this Regional Vision Zero plan is next summer. So summer of 2024, which is very aggressive. The reason we want to be aggressive with this plan development process is we want to enable the region to apply for capital dollars in the next cycle of grants. And that can be for the same Safe Streets and Roads for All grants or for other grant opportunities where we can seek to start implementing some of the capital improvements that are identified in this plan. Lastly, the lessons learned from Vision Zero action plan that comes from this grant, we'll take those lessons and start applying them to and integrate them into the 2025 regional plan. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any public comment?
No, Chair, we don't have any public comment.
All right, so,
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the report and happy to accept the grant funding. I do want to point out that in the city of Encinitas, we have no jurisdiction over several school districts that have, that serve the students of our city. And my hope is that we can be sure to include school districts in the outreach and the education here because we're seeing a significant swing of mode shift for students, not only at high schools, but also at elementary schools. So there are some significant concerns about the safety issues that are associated with that. We've had some accidents and we're working to address that, but it's taking a lot of coordination with the school districts who have policies or don't and need them. And so keeping the school districts in mind as you're rolling out this program and advocating for safety is important. I also would point out that one of the things that we're seeing is that a shortage of league of smart cycling, or the League of Cyclists has instructor programs that they offer. And we could use more instructors, and resources through SANDAG would be very beneficial to ensure that we increase the number of instructors for bike safety issues. Thank you.
thank you, Mayor. Is that a motion? Is that a motion to support?
Would move
I mean, no
approval.
pressure. but-
Yes, ma'am. No, that was
Sorry.
not, that was an easy one.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed that.
And
All right.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Mayor?
I just had a couple of questions and I really liked your reasoning in talking about the school districts. In San Marcos, we have no school buses. And so for us to get our kids to school safely, it's been such a challenge, and many of them are riding e-bikes and whatnot and using our 72 miles of trails in our city. So anything that we could do to expand that to our school districts, I definitely agree with. And then I also wanted to bring up class 4 bike lanes, because I have a lot of folks that give me cyclists that give me feedback on that. Many of them are not do not feel that they're safe because the curb stops are very dangerous. And I think they could also include the candlesticks, which they say are also dangerous when they're when serious cyclists are riding. Many times they if one of them falls, it's literally like a house of cards. I mean, many of them end up getting seriously hurt, which is also another situation. I think there was an incident recently in Encinitas, which made me think of this. And there was a child, or like I don't know if it was a preteen or something like that, but they actually got thrown into the driving lane out of this because they hit that curb stop so hard. So if we could just make sure that we're getting plenty of feedback and making sure that we are implementing the best and safest technology, and maybe it isn't the class 4 bike lanes, I really would like to, make sure that we're doing that. So anyway, just my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things that I hope we can address, because it does mention bike safety in there, is that we talk about e-bikes and the safety, because if you ever travel down this Coronado Strand into Imperial Beach, you'll see a lot of people, and it's nice open road. It's a beautiful ride down there, but the discrepancy between people who are walking, people who are on regular, human powered bikes, and then the speed at which e-bikes ride is insane. We've had some horrendous crashes that created some serious injuries down there. So I hope that can be, thing. Again, it's great. There's new technology. I know people who will travel on their e-bike 30 miles round trip now to, save some gas and to do something differently. But I think including some bike safety that includes e-bikes would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to say also that I want to congratulate the staff for all the work that they've been doing on this. And I think it's been mentioned before, I think it really does allow for all of us to be able to, focus on what future funding as well for these opportunities. So I think that's fantastic. So we have a motion and a second, and we have, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation as well. In Carlsbad, we've had an emergency due to the tragic death of someone on an e-bike last August. And we've learned a lot through that with how we move people through the city and with the influx of e-bikes over the course of COVID. So, one of the things that we do is build class 2 bike lanes. And so I think this plan calls for class 4 bike lanes, which would be a lower grade. So I guess my question is the funding going to be tied to that classification? And then I would also say that we have trained CPD to implement courses for e-bike riders. We're also looking into getting like an e-bike certificate or, God bless you.
Excuse me.
Some accountability on the ridership, right? So is any of that in this type of funding? And would it be available to help train people that can then train e-bike riders?
So on the first question about the level of class of bicycle facility. So this is a grant for planning. Specifically, we're not allowed to use it for capital yet. We have to have a qualifying plan, and then we can go back to the same funder and request funds for the projects that were identified through the planning process for that capital improvement side. But we will be working with your jurisdictional staff through our mobility working group and other venues to get their input as well, as far as what has worked well in different areas, because many of the solutions are going to be context specific as to what might work in a coastal community versus other communities. As far as the second part, help me remember what the second one was.
Just funding for training people to train people to ride.
Okay. That might be one of the policy recommendations that comes out of this as we go through, and it'll be a robust process where we'll have that multidisciplinary team advising the development of the plan, and that will include education as part of it.
Thank you for recognizing that what works in beachy communities may not work everywhere else.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the presentation and all the wonderful questions. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to ask Robin, who's going to give us a quick overview of what's expected out of board retreat. This is item number 19. I'm really excited and looking forward to spending a whole day and a half with all of you so that we can really come up with some wonderful priorities for the region as a whole. So Robin?
Thank you, Chairwoman. And to that note, I think we have RSVPs from just about every single jurisdiction, but if we haven't heard from you yet, if you can please let us know today so we can make sure we're providing necessary accommodations for everyone. We are pleased to be organizing your board retreat this year, March 9th and 10th at Viejas. Some of you may know this is something that we typically do on an annual basis to make sure that the board has the time and the space to do some strategic planning, collaboration, just really focus on what are the major milestones and projects coming up for the year. So to that end, we did provide a survey to the board members. I think it was at your last meeting or the meeting before that. And based on that, there were really 3 themes that sort of came to the top that you all were interested in. First one, collaboration and partnership. Second one, you wanted to make sure that we provided the opportunity to have an open and honest dialogue. And then 3, we heard from a lot of you that you really just wanted to have a better understanding of what's going on at Sandag. What are the projects? What are the priorities? And what are some of the major decision points you're going to have facing you this year? So to that end, we are working with a facilitator to really create a very interactive session. This is not going to be staff talking at you for a day and a half. We really want to provide the opportunity, as you asked for you all to work together and to get to know staff better. We also want to make sure you have a base level of understanding walking out of the retreat on some of the projects and, like I said, decisions that are going to be coming towards you this year. So on Thursday, we're going to start off. Colleen's going to basically help set the stage. Where have we been and where are we going? This is going to reiterate some of the things that I covered in your Sandag 101 briefing a couple of meetings ago, as well as looking forward about what's to come. Once we have that base understanding, we're going to provide you an opportunity to really get to know staff and get into some of the weeds to the extent that you're interested. We're setting up sort of like an exhibit hall. And so we'll have about 20, 25 tables set up, focused on some of our specific projects, programs, and policies. So you can get out there with your fellow board members, really interact and ask the questions that you've been dying to know. After that, we'll have lunch. And then in the afternoon is where we're going to really do the tough work. So we're going to have a facilitator come in and focus on consensus building and have that open and honest dialogue that we've heard that you all want. Where can we agree? Where are we never going to agree? And where are the areas where maybe we can agree? Now, we thought that would be a nice slot to put in the weighted vote discussion that the chairwoman has committed to. And I know there was some interest in figuring out exactly what that's going to look like. So again, going back to the theme of education, we've asked your general counsel, John Kirk, to provide a brief presentation to sort of, again, set the stage. Give you the legal requirements for the voting process at Sandag, give you some history on what voting used to look like at Sandag, how voting operates with similar agencies, and then leave it to our facilitator to have that conversation with you about where we go from here. That'll wrap up our day on Thursday, March 9th. We'll have a dinner that evening. I should note that we are not planning to have any speakers at the meals like we have in past retreats. And again, this is to provide the space for you all to talk to each other and to talk to staff instead of listening to a speaker. On Friday, the focus is going to transition to the regional plan. Now, I want to be really clear. We're not making any policy decisions at the retreat. We're not looking for any policy direction. This really, again, is about providing the fundamental understanding of the regional plan and other subjects that we'll be covering so that you all have the information you need going forward. So the first session that day is we've called Fact or Fiction. We think it's really important as a public agency that you and the public have the right facts and data to make your decisions. You know, this is one of those cases where you have to be careful what you ask for. We said we wanted a public policy debate, and we certainly have started that public policy debate, but we want to make sure that that's based on truth. And so we're inviting third-party experts to join us so we can pose some of those questions. Is this true? Is this not? And let them tell us what sort of the ground rules are as you're making decisions on the regional plan. And then we'll move into an interactive exercise with both board members and community members. We're going to be inviting representatives from all across the region. Every sub-region will be represented to have a conversation together about everything that goes into a regional plan. We sort of coined it like a Rubik's Cube, right? It's really, really difficult to somehow make a regional plan come together, but we have to do it every 4 years. So we want to make sure you all understand that so that when we're coming to you with these tough questions later on in the year, you sort of know, again, what the ground rules are. And that's going to wrap it up on Friday. We'll be done about 11:30 on Friday. So Thursday, think 9 to 5-ish, Friday, 8:30 to 11:30-ish. They're both public meetings. I should mention some logistics. 1, attire, smart casual attire. 2, for participation. This is going to be in-person participation as we've historically done for the retreat. However, for the first time ever, we're happy to be providing online streaming. So if folks want to watch the retreat, we will have a link online available for that. But in order to participate, provide comments, you need to be there in person.
Robin, I don't know what smart business attire is.
Second Vice Chair, do you want to describe what smart casual?
Yes, I will tell you what it's not. One year we had a former chair show up in old stained sweats and a college t-shirt. That is not smart casual. What smart casual is would be jeans, some nice tennies or booties or boots or whatever. And, something that's nice, something that you would maybe wear to dinner, but not a fancy dinner. How's that? You don't have to wear a blazer. You don't have to wear a tie, definitely not businessy stuff, but you're not going to Costco either.
I look really pretty when I go to Costco. Have you been to the Costco in Chula Vista? All my voters are there. I gotta look nice when I go to Costco. But anyway, all right. Well, thank you for that wonderful presentation. Any public comments on this item?
Thank you, Chair. We do have a few public comments. First, we will go to Tim Bilish. And after that, we'll go on to Zoom and start with Blair Beekman.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, board, again, for taking my comment. And thank you, Robin and staff, for organizing this retreat again. Last year's was pretty good. I might ask the retreat to bring up two issues in their discussions that are not necessarily central to transportation, but I wonder sometimes how the transportation decisions affect real estate valuations, which are a huge part of workers' home ownerships, which is under attack. And I was wondering if there might be some input that the retreat could add to that. The second, and how the targeted profit to specific industries or persons or companies in the area that we may not be aware of in how these move forward. The second was to consider the wisdom of increasing county population in the regional plans and in the state plans and the federal plans, and particularly trying to attract more businesses or not, and which types. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Blair Beekman, who will be followed by Catherine Rhodes.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Sadly, I wanted to speak on the previous item, and I was raising my hand, in the process of raising my hand, when the clerk said that public comment is now closed. So I have something really important to say. I won't say it now. I'll simply send yourselves a letter about the future of how accountability with technology needs to be a really important part of the future of Vision Zero. And hopefully I'll send this letter to yourselves, and you can hopefully you can all receive it and hopefully talk for days about it at your retreat coming up, and it'll be the most important thing to your lives. And I guess overall, thanks for your time, and be looking for my upcoming letter on public comment from the previous item of Vision Zero stuff. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Next will be Catherine Rhodes, and Catherine will be our final speaker on this item.
Oh, wonderful. Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes. And at the meeting, I was wondering if you could tell all the new people about the Transnet ordinance. A lot of people don't understand that there were only 3 projects that were promised, and that was the Mid-Coast Corridor and the eastern extension of two freeways. And that's it. And then every year you redo everything. So a lot of people think that things that were promised, there were only 3 promises. And for the weighted vote, I want to make sure that you tell everybody that the weighted vote always existed. Weighted vote isn't anything new. And the only reason I think that people have a problem was because the Republicans ruled Sandag for 30 years. And just in 2020 is when the Democrats, were had the majority on the Board of Supervisors and City Council. And so, that's why things changed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes the public commenters.
Thank you. And seeing no other member comments, we're going to go ahead and move to item number 20. This is an informational item, so we'll move on to an installment of Sandag 101, which is a series that we've created with Dr. Cindy Burke.
Chair, I'm so sorry. I thought I hit my button, but I didn't to make a comment on that.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm so grateful to have this retreat, and I think it's important for all of us to remember the purpose that we sit on this board. And I think one of the things that outside this wall, most people only think of Sandag as the board, and they only discuss things that rhyme with road uses tax and weighted vote.
And again, as a new member of the board, I watched what happened at our first meeting. And, this is something that's very serious. And I hope that at the weighted vote meeting that we can discuss ways that there's no push from either side, that we have honest and open discussions. And then if we need to come back to an item that we can. And I think that's for me, the commitment to really understand, where the weighted vote and Chair, you've mentioned that the weighted vote is a tool, and I think it is. I agree. I think it is a tool, but I don't think it's been used in the correct for the perception is it may have not been used in the correct way in the past. And so, like I said, I'm hopeful that people will have a better understanding what Sandag is outside these walls, and that as we move forward this year, that we do so with harmony and with the real impression that we get stuff done. I attended the working group meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they had all the working groups and there was over 100 people I counted. And, it made me really understand that my responsibility on this board is that I work together, that we talk about things, and that we represent all those people who are volunteering their time on those working groups as they bring it here, plus all the hours and hundreds of hours that staff spends on it. So when it gets to this level of approval, that our greatest asset would be that we work things out together and to have those open, honest discussions. So I'm looking forward to the retreat. So thank you.
Thank you. So am I. All right, next.
Good morning, Chair Vargas and board members. I'm pleased to be here today to serve as your second installment on your 101 series. I'm the Senior Director of Data Science, and I'll be sharing some background with you today regarding why and how we use data at Sandag. I'd like to also quickly recognize some of our senior staff in data science who are here today as well. Naomi, who oversees our economics team, Andy, who oversees our mapping team, Wu and Ing with our transportation modeling team, and Mike Duncan, who oversees our quality control of our data. So before we dig in, I know how much Hassan likes quotes, so I had to add one. It's a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts. I wanted to share this with you today because I think it captures the importance of what we do here at Sandag. We want to be a data-driven agency. We want to make data-driven decisions, and we're committed to doing that in partnership with your jurisdictions. At Sandag, we use data as the foundation of all we do. When we plan, when we build, and when we provide and preserve resources. And as a board, you often hear about the planning and construction of our priority projects, which are shown on the slide here. But underlying all that is data. For example, our forecast and modeling teams estimate ridership and trip numbers, border wait time, toll revenue estimates. We conduct social equity analyses and also environmental impact analysis. While we believe the importance of using valid and reliable data in all our work, I think it's important to acknowledge we're also mandated to do so. As Robin shared with you last month in her presentation, Sandag has multiple roles as a municipal planning agency, regional transportation agency, council of governments, and a consolidated agency. And while much of what we do is best practice, it's also mandated at both the state and federal level as shown on this slide, which highlights just some of those statutes. These require that Sandag use the best and most up-to-date information to understand the region, create and update forecasts and models, and measure impacts objectively. At the foundation of much of the work we do in data science is creating annual estimates and long-range regional and sub-regional growth forecast out 20 years and more for both population, housing, and jobs. Coming up with our population forecast involves creating something called a cohort component model that uses fertility, mortality, and migration assumptions. How many people are coming into the region? How many people are leaving it? This forecast is then used to inform our housing forecast through an iterative process that includes us working closely with your jurisdictions to take into account land use policies, general plan updates, and other policy impacts such as accessory dwelling units or ADUs. Our employment forecast is based on a model that uses national, state, and local trends to predict economic growth and is also informed by the population forecast. While these forecasts are utilized for a number of purposes, both internally and by your jurisdictions, they're also an important input into our activity-based model, or ABM, which is a transportation model we use to predict the number and types of trips our communities will be making in the near and long-term future. The output of these models are a number of different metrics used for our planning and performance monitoring purposes, as well as to meet the mandates I previously mentioned. Travel decisions include, should I go to the store for a few things, or should I order something on Amazon? Do I walk? Do I drive? Do I do several errands at the same time? Or do I take a freeway or a side street? All of those things are what the model tries to predict. We also have different types of trips that we look at. Not every trip is the same. We know that residents travel differently than people who may be coming into attractions, visitors in the region, people who are coming to the airport. Commercial vehicles have really changed since COVID. We know that there's been a greater use of Amazon, DoorDash, those different types of vehicles. And a regional, we know people come from other counties surrounding San Diego County to get to the border or to go to another county. We know that many individuals come into San Diego from Mexico to work or to shop. And we also know that heavy duty trucks affect our VMT or GHG, as well as how backed up we are on the roads. And then we also have outputs from these complex modeling. And we want to, again, quantify mobility, social equity, and environmental impacts. That is, the model as a tool assists decision makers in both planning and understanding the impact of different travel decisions, policies, and inputs. A number of different outputs are computed, as this last column shows. This slide shows a mapping application our team made during the 2021 regional planning process that allowed planners to visualize travel patterns to major employment centers, to military employment centers, to recreational activity centers, as well as to the Mexican border. This last slide may date myself, but it reminds me of the Spirograph toy I had as a child. But the planners tell me this is very helpful to visually understand. As you know from Robin's presentation, we're required to do a regional plan every 4 years, and we've talked about it at this meeting today. We're working on our amendment, but we're also, the data team is busy working on the 2025 regional plan. What the biggest improvement is going to be, there's a lot of different things that are going to be different from our 2021 regional plan, but when we did that 2021 regional plan, we had a base year of 2016. We know how much things have changed since 2016, so we're going to be using a 2022 base year. And we are also going to be doing other improvements. One thing is big data. We hear the term big data a lot, and we're currently using replica data, which uses anonymized cell phone data that provides detailed data down to the census block level regarding trips that people make around the region, as well as other data that can be combined regarding land use and consumer spending. And our team is working closely with the planners to create a 2025 regional plan data explorer. So as they look at what that next plan is going to be in a partnership with the jurisdictions, we can understand what the effects of different policies and decisions will be made in projects. We also collect data that's not available everywhere. So big data is great. We can buy that, we can look at it, but it doesn't tell us everything. We don't understand a lot of the how, whys, and the details. So these are 6 different surveys or data collection efforts that are going into our model right now. So while 2025 seems really far off, we've been working since 2019 on many of these. One is a parking survey. We had done a parking survey previously, but it was very scattered around the region. We did a more comprehensive inventory because the availability and cost of parking affects travel decisions we make. So we need to input that data into our ABM model. We're also doing a commercial vehicle survey that helps us understand local delivery services, again, such as Amazon, DoorDash, and Uber Eats, how that affects our travel decisions. And our biggest one is the household travel behavior survey. That involves a variety of different methodologies. We know it's harder to survey people. Anybody who gets links or a phone call calls on their cell phone now. We don't all have landlines, so we do a lot of different ways to understand not just where people are going, which we could get from the big data, but also who are they going with? What's the purpose of the trip? How did they make that travel decision? A telecommute survey of both employees and employers is being updated. We did that right at the end of the COVID period, but we want to make sure that we understand how that is impacting people's travel around the region. We're doing a mandated onboard transit survey. We had planned to do that prior to COVID, and that got postponed, obviously. So we'll be doing that to understand about people in transit, and that'll also help us further inform the Youth Opportunity Pass and other transit efforts. And then finally, we completed a cross-border travel survey also in late 2019 that was used to update the ABM cross-border travel model. So all of these are data that is very important to go in, garbage in, garbage out. We want to have good information going in. And I'm really excited to share with you today about our open data portal, and the link is there. And if you haven't gone to the site, I really hope that you do take the time to look to see all the data we have for your jurisdictions that previously weren't available in one place. We recently found out that our ODP was awarded the 2023 Tyler Excellence Award for the public sector to highlight our innovation and commitment to communities and sharing data and insights throughout the region. This open data portal launched in the fall, and currently we have about 15 different categories of data, over 2,000 data assets. People can get on, play with the data, download the data. And to highlight, the little box that you see on these slides hopefully will help you to navigate if you do get on the site, if you haven't been on it. We had something called Data Surfer, which we now have a link here, and we'll be updating that. That is our census estimates and forecast tab. One can currently access over 750 data sets, as well as our Data Surfer to create custom analysis for different years and geographies. We have interactive dashboards as well. And the dashboard, the safety dashboard Sam just spoke to you about in the last presentation, will also be something that we'll be adding up here to help further support our Vision Zero plan. The two that we have here are our iBike map mileage dashboard, as well as our highway traffic data map. We started doing that at the beginning of COVID to understand how vehicle speeds on the freeways have changed, how average daily traffic volumes have changed, as well as vehicle miles traveled. Another thing that we started at the time of COVID was up-to-date data on employment. We started that in May of 2020 to look again visually across the region, how have our unemployment rates changed and how do they compare to different areas across the region. And SDGs might be something that is a new term for you, but I hope not, and I hope that we get to work closely with your jurisdictions on that. The United Nations started the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. It's a collection of 17 interlinked objectives designed to be a shared blueprint for prosperity for all of us. As you can see, they touch on such areas as poverty, hunger, health, and education, and they can help cities and jurisdictions make policy priorities, identify gaps, and measure progress. If we were all doing that independently, we wouldn't be able to see how our measures are accounted for and how they're consistently measured. And so the data are up there for a number of different measures, and we are also working with your jurisdictions, and we'll be continuing to do more outreach on something called the voluntary local review, so that our jurisdictions can work together to improve outcomes in all of these areas. Something that you may have seen in our last regional planning process was better understanding where people live and work. This was something called Employment Centers 1.0, and we're working on Employment Centers 2.0, so that you all have data about who's traveling to your jurisdictions to work, because many people don't always live and work in the same place, and also where your residents will be traveling to work. Community characteristics is something called segmentation of big data. And what we did here, and we're going to be updating this also, these packets are on our open data portal. National City is just cited there as an example. We have them for all your jurisdictions and can also do analysis for lower levels of geography. But it's understanding that, well, there's people who, a family of four who live in North Park might be different or have different needs than a family of four who live in Carlsbad or who live out in Santee. And so it's understanding what are the different needs of different groups of individuals and how can we make sure that as we're providing services, for example, around mobility hubs or in jurisdictions, how can we understand those different communities to best meet those needs? One size does not fit all. We're a diverse community, and how can we not just think about jurisdictional lines, but also use the data we have to meet the needs of everyone in the region? Performance monitoring is something we're doing. We talked about the safety dashboard, but my team is also responsible for doing something called the State of the Commute report that's mandated under the ITALK and also Transnet ordinance. And with this report, we prepare it annually. And again, it is on our open data portal to be able to understand such metrics as transit ridership, to have that transparency with the data, as well as travel times, whether individuals on the same routes are in a single occupancy vehicle or using transit. As Hassan has said many times, we want to make sure that transit time is as competitive as traveling in a car, and that's where we're going. Two things that we're going to talk about. I know we pulled item 4 today, and there is going to be a public safety 101 coming to your board in the future. But we have two parts of data science that a lot of other MPOs do not have. One is ARGIS, and ARGIS stands for the Automated Regional Justice Information System. And that's a complex criminal justice enterprise network, as Mayor Mento mentioned, that's used by more than 60 local, state, and federal agencies. Regional crime maps were recently added to our open data portal. I'm excited about being able to see in the future, how can we merge our different data sets that Sandag has, for example, the census data with ARGIS data. But this, you can get on there and see the most recent law enforcement statistics for different jurisdictions, and again, play with the data. And we also have a criminal justice research division, which many of you knew I oversaw for a period of time. And their crime does not always respect jurisdictional boundaries. Crime is a public safety issue, as well as with many of the other issues that we look at. And so what the Criminal Justice Research Division does is compile crime statistics in partnership with your agencies and other data, such as public safety budget data, victimization data, and also does independent evaluations. For every $1 in clearinghouse funds the Criminal Justice Research Division gets, we bring in about $3 in grant funding to do evaluations, independent evaluations of what works to keep our community safe. Another important part of our work is data integrity, data quality, and that comes out of our plan of excellence. We want to do internal and external reviews with our data, and these are things we call PRPs, peer review panels. And this slide just shows some of the different entities that we brought in to do our most rigorous set of review of the data, tier 4s. And while PRPs help us with validation, was the right model built, our QA team, which Mike oversees, also helps us determine if the model was built right, a process of verification. And Calvin and Dante, who are shown on the slide, might kill me later. But I really wanted you to see that there's faces behind all the data and all the work that we do. Everybody here on the data science team are very highly skilled. They could be probably making a lot more money at the private sector, but they're committed to the quality of life in the region and using data to make those decisions. So I wanted to highlight here about that they are working internally so that we use Sandag, the best quality data, and that we do so in a proactive way, set up ways to do that, and then also have independent eyes checking all the data decisions that we make moving forward. So in closing, I know this was a lot of information we shared. Data science does a lot. But we are mandated to create and maintain data to do the best planning and implementation possible in partnership with your jurisdictions and our community stakeholders. Throughout the process of this compilation, forecasting, visualization, and measuring, we are committed to the quality of the data, sharing it in useful and timely ways, and to use it internally. And so if you or any of your councils would ever like us to make a data presentation tailored to your jurisdiction, please know we'd be happy to do that. And if you'd like any data that you can't find on our open data portal, please let us know, because we're here to make you do the best jobs you can for the important roles you have for your jurisdictions in the region. So that is my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I know my team uses this data in our public policy process to present initiatives at the county, so I appreciate that information. I have a couple of, do you have any public comment on this item?
Thank you, Chair. We do. First, we'll go to Alex Wong, who will be followed by Karina Contreras.
It's awesome Sandag is using data to improve transit and decrease vehicle miles traveled in San Diego. That said, Sandag should put far more emphasis on improving transit frequency. Sandag's activity-based model sensitivity report predicts that increasing the frequency of every transit route by 50% would increase ridership by only 16%. In other words, the frequency ridership elasticity would be 0.33. However, the actual elasticity is likely much higher than 0.33. Here's why. First, the analysis increases ridership on every route by 50%, but if a transit agency focused on maximizing ridership was about to run 50% more vehicles per hour over its entire system, it would not increase frequencies on every route equally. Instead, it would increase frequencies by over 50% on the busiest lines and by less than 50% on less busy lines. Secondly, the analysis assumes a 50% increase in transit frequencies across all routes. However, some of the busiest transit routes like the Midcoast and Green Lines could easily increase frequency by 100%. Thirdly, the analysis studies frequency increases in isolation from other factors like land use. San Diego is rapidly densifying along the Blue and Green Lines, the two busiest transit routes in the county. This densification allows residents of areas like Mission Valley to work, shop, and play without leaving the neighborhood, generating massive amounts of short 10-15-minute trips where the frequency ridership elasticity is much higher than it is for longer trips. Think about it. 15-minute frequencies don't feel that bad for a 30-40-minute trip, but no one wants to wait up to 15 minutes for a 10-minute trolley ride across Mission Valley. Everyone with a car will drive instead. And finally, the predicted 0.33 elasticity is just that, a prediction. By contrast, numerous research papers analyzing actual past data in cities across the world found frequency elasticities ranging from around 0.22 to 1.1. In Portland, a city similar in density to San Diego, the 12 frequent bus lines that increased frequencies showed a 1.1 frequency ridership elasticity. So Sandag's predicted 0.33 elasticity is likely an underestimate.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Karina Contreras, who will be followed by Mary D.
Thank you so much. This is Karina Contreras, Transportation Policy Advocate for Climate Action Campaign. And I actually just had, I had two questions, but I think one of them was answered. So, but my first question is in regards to the amended 2021 regional plan. And is that going to, I know the modeling still has to be done for that plan. Is that going to use ABM3 or is it using a different activity-based model? My second question that I just want to make sure that I heard the answer correctly. It was, what is the timeline to determine the base year used for ABM3 since the 2025 regional plan will be using ABM3, but I believe that the answer to that is 2022 will be the baseline for ABM3. So, but yeah, just curious about the amended 2021 regional plan. Because I know that still has to go through modeling and then be submitted to CARB. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mary D., who will be followed by Catherine Rhodes and Blair Beekman, who will be our last speaker.
Thank you, Francesca. Mary D. here. Again, as you barrel along in your new regional plan, I'm asking you to pivot from your current grand intentions and recommit to putting some of the original Transnet projects back on the table, particularly adding lanes to State Route 67, which is critical to traffic and fire evacuation safety, as well as 52 in Mass. And regarding your shift in priorities and the past projects dangled before us to get us to vote on those Transnet bonds, I keep hearing that those projects were, quote, never promised, that the board was free to change their minds and pivot at their discretion. But that begs the question, then why even include those other projects in the ballot language? Why didn't the ballot simply list the projects you were promising? And the answer becomes abundantly clear, because you wanted to entice voters and lure them into buying into forking over their hard-earned money for another 40 years. So while we can argue semantics about promises versus obligations versus board discretion, integrity and accountability demand we refocus on the original premise of intent. In other words, don't blame the fish for biting as you sit down to your halibut dinner and snicker about how stupid the fish was for taking the bait that you dangled. Thank you.
Next will be Catherine Rhodes, who will be followed by Blair Beekman.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes. And as a homeless advocate, what I would really like is a vision zero for the homeless. You know, a lot of homeless ride bikes and a lot of homeless live on the freeway on Caltrans property. And, you know, they get killed walking along the freeways and then all over downtown. In fact, you know, there was over 500 homeless people who died last year in San Diego County. A couple of years ago, it was only 50. So the amount of deaths is insane. And so I think that Vision Zero should include homeless people. And similarly, the County of San Diego is now going to map where people who died of fentanyl or had, you know, problems with fentanyl, they're going to start mapping that. And so, you know, I think also a lot of the homeless are dying because of the fentanyl also. And so I just would like your data to actually have a whole entire section on homeless who get killed and have that be part of Vision Zero also. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next will be Blair Beekman, and Blair will be our final speaker.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks a lot for the words of public comment on this item, and especially from the last speaker. In San Jose, we're just starting to address the concept of homeless deaths due to traffic issues. And it's a really important topic in San Jose. It's creating a lot of debate on how we talk about and use statistical deaths with traffic, and we're trying to parse that out. And we realize that we need to be serving homeless people in this situation. What's going on with that issue? Why are they being killed in such large numbers? Thank you a lot for the words of the previous speaker. I hope it's something San Diego will want to work on as well. I wanted to just comment that the use of this ARGIS program and the concepts of how to include census data into its future, I think we have to be very cautious in using words like that. It was very nicely spoken how there can be independent eyes for overview of the process and public oversight, which is incredibly important just to say those words as we talk about these subjects. Thank you. But I just think it really has to be questioned what exactly is we use ARGIS for. I understand its importance and how it helps the study process so much. But with using it in census issues has to be with a great deal of caution. And to quickly offer Vision Zero ideas that were also mentioned for this item. Yeah, I think I can better sum up what I'm feeling in a letter to yourselves that again, hopefully you just will want to talk about and think about at your upcoming retreat. But for now, just the importance of, it was mentioned for future projects, the need of technology. And with that technology, there has to be a sense that we're doing this with the idea of open, accountable practices with the tech. That's how you build the community harmony that's so important to Vision Zero. And that's the process that I think people will really enjoy and want to be a part of for the future excitement of this process.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the public speakers.
Thank you. We have a couple of members who have comments. Supervisor Escobar.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to everybody. I've been lucky to serve on this board as an advisory member for the past 4+ years. And I do see a lot of friendly faces and a lot of new faces. So I look forward to congratulations, first of all, and I look forward to meeting all of you in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. Congratulations to our chair, our vice chair, and our second vice chair as well. Specifically on data science and the information that can be provided, San Diego County and Imperial County share a common border with Mexico. And a portion of our revenue stream when it comes to road projects does come specifically from road miles as well as car registrations. Unfortunately, a key ingredient is missing, And that variable is international border crossers. Obviously, we all know that Tijuana is our largest port of entry. Calexico is not that far behind. If we do the math, we have multiple border crossing entries throughout both counties combined, going from west to east, San Isidro, Otay Mesa, Tecate, Calexico West, Calexico East, and Algodones. And you add the three commercial ports, again, west to east, Otay Mesa, Tecate, and Calexico. And that is not including the spectacular new project that will come in the next few years, which is Otay East. So again, what I would love to do is partner with the County of San Diego and with Sandag and develop opportunities and collaborate together to be able to bring additional funding from both the state and the feds in order to be able to improve our future road projects. Thank you.
Dr. Burke, can you clarify, there is data specific. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of the border?
Yeah, so most recently, we updated our cross-border model, and that came from data that we looked at people who are coming into San Diego County, as well as individuals who lived in the region and were traveling down to Mexico. We also have data from individuals who are coming in to visit, and we have our household travel behavior survey. So we do want to take that into consideration. Our data teams also looked at the economic impact of border delays and how that has impacted our regions across, but definitely, I think collaboration is important, and we definitely want to keep working that way.
Yeah, I would love to see in the future a presentation and maybe work together with the Borders Committee to present that information to the whole board because of the economic impact the border has in the San Diego County region as a whole. Because I think sometimes when people think about East Otay Mesa or some of these port of entries, they think it's a South County issue or a border issue, but it really is a regional and a global issue because of the impact, the financial impact that it has. So I really appreciate your comments and hoping that we can bring that forth in the future. Thank you for that. The next member is Councilmember Molina.
Thank you very much, Board Chair Vargas. Thank you very much, Dr. Burke, for your information. I am thoroughly fascinated by big data and its potential. All of the collection of this massive information can be very, very useful for forecasting. It could also be overwhelming and misunderstood. And sadly, it could also be blinding if it is missing any type of report from any of our very diverse communities. I appreciate during your presentation that you did highlight the very diverse communities that make up San Diego County. And my question is, I would like for you to perhaps make a comment on the equitable approach used towards collecting this data upon all of our diverse communities. For example, the number of surveys that you highlighted on your slide deck, are those available in multiple languages? And are you reaching out to folks who don't necessarily have cell phones, for example, and so the data doesn't flow in that direction? Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's so important, and there's so many nuances when we're collecting the data from sampling of making sure, and we work with community-based organizations when we do different types of groups using Prometeras for different types of projects across the range, acknowledging there may be trepidation by some groups to participate in surveys, not knowing where their data is going to. So trying to use trusted messengers whenever possible, making sure that we offer translation services when possible, and that we reach out in different ways. It's always translated into Spanish. And when we get feedback that there's other questions, making sure that we have equitability, that things meet ADA compliance, understanding people have different levels of comfort with different types of technology. So for example, letting people use paper when they want to surveys versus doing that with, cell phone apps or different things like that, doing different types of incentives whenever possible, but then also pre-testing instruments when we collect data also, because we want to make sure that we're showing sensitivity, that things are written at an appropriate level where people can understand, that we can follow up. And we really want to make sure people know that we take confidence and that they feel okay sharing their data with us too, that it's held in a confidential, anonymous way, that it can't go back to ever have a negative impact on them. So it is a big priority for us across all aspects from the sampling, asking the questions, analyzing the data, making sure that with the peer review process I shared with you, that we're making sure that the data, that we're not just looking at something in a silo, that we're looking in a collaborative way to make sure we're interpreting data correctly.
Thank you. Member Chu.
Well, I think Sandak has come a long ways in terms of the data. 10 years ago, most of the data I got was how much it costs for someone to wait 15 minutes in a traffic jam. So we've gone a long way. And I don't need an answer now, but there's a couple of things that I hope we can move towards in terms of future data collecting. And if you want to comment, you can, but we're running short on time. One is with social equity and health equity. I really like to see more information as to going a bit further than environmental screening in terms of asthma, cancer deaths, particularly as it relates to transportation illnesses or illnesses related to transportation. So we talk about safety and traffic accidents. We have data on that. But we're missing a link there with regards to, because our goal is not just move people and goods and services from one point to another. It's now to have a healthier community. And that means a lot more than just the issue of moving people. Second is a data point that I've been pushing for over 10 years, is to have data on the cost of transportation combined with housing cost as a percentage of family income. That data point has been developed in other communities from Canada throughout, and I think it may be a very important one as we deal with transportation and land use together and to improve our communities. But it's a percentage of family income. And I don't think it's going to be that hard to find. You probably have the data, we just need to crank out the work. So to me, that's what's in the future, and I appreciate the help that this data is doing to transform our thinking about what we can do here at Sandag.
Thank you. Councilmember Gasterland?
Yeah, I really want to thank you for the opendata.sandag.org. I downloaded the data for the Series 14 forecast jobs by jurisdiction while you were doing your talk and did a little analysis to look at what the forecasts are for Del Mar. Because our tiny cities, our tiny jurisdictions like Del Mar and Solana Beach are really good checkpoints for being able to take a look at kind of what we would call in the data science world, the integrity of the data, the integrity of the model. And I'll point out that less than half the jobs in Del Mar are anything other than leisure and hospitality. Leisure and hospitality, for example, is 2,400 jobs in 2018. We have 3 hotels and about a dozen tiny restaurants in tiny Del Mar. So most of those jobs are going to be the fairgrounds. Between 2016 and 2020, which is the most recent year for which you have actual data in this table, the jobs grew by 1.5% total. That's from 2016 to 2020. And then you're projecting in this forecast that in the next 5 years, by 2025, the jobs will grow by 2.3%. And they've waffled between going up and going down over the actual data. But then in 2030, your forecast shows the jobs in Del Mar growing by 19%, and 600 of those jobs are at the fairgrounds. So maybe your forecasts know something that we don't know, but I think there may be some things in the model that we may want to be taking a look at very closely.
We're currently working on our Series 15 forecast, and we're working very closely with your jurisdictions, as you mentioned, with the working group that just met. We definitely want to increase improving on prior levels of collaboration with your communication. We're also going to be reaching out as we do our employment centers 2.0. And I know my staff met with, I believe, you and your city manager to talk about how we could help support you in your analysis and understanding. So we definitely want to have communication and collaboration going both ways.
Yeah, it's going to be so important to our entire region to know that when we're counting a job, given that our RENA numbers are allocated based on job and major transportation, that the jobs are really jobs. They're really held by people who work here full time and not the transient 2,400 fairgrounds jobs that belong to people for a few weeks and then move to the other fairgrounds in other parts of the state.
Yeah, hold on. Councilmember, you're going to go ahead and wait, right? Okay, thank you. Mayor Jones?
I just had one quick comment, and I don't need a response. I just wanted to mention that on the household travel surveys, we really need to try to reach out, I think, to school districts and sports, other extracurricular activities, as well as medical trips, because those are, I think, pretty intense. If you talk to families, a lot of them do a lot of those sorts of things. So I just wanted to bring that up to make sure that we are capturing those as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. And this is really a reminder to everyone that Sandag is a resource to. Oh, I'm gonna go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, finish.
No, I was just reminding folks that Sandag is a resource for all of our jurisdictions to make sure that we're using this data as we're in the, in the policymaking process, and particularly for our budgets, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Cindy. I just something for you to know, because you don't get lots of time to meet your staff. Dr. Burke is absolutely one of the best in the country. And a year ago, I asked her to lead this group, and she's going to do amazing work. The reason I'm telling you this is everything we talk about, and regardless how you feel about the regional transportation plan or the priorities, everything we talk about, because of the way technology works, is going to depend at our ability to have the right data. Driverless cars, smart shuttles, driverless shuttles, pilots, all of that. So next month, when we present to you to the budget, you're going to see quite a bit of requests for allocation to do these kind of things. I would encourage you to contact Dr. Burke or some of her staff when you get the agenda to know the detail, because it's a complicated stuff. But know that the reason this agency, and I proudly say the staff of this agency are viewed are the most innovative in the country, is because of our ability to do what Dr. Burke talked about. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead. That was, again, thank you so much for your presentation. We're going to go back to item number 8 and item number 12. Item number 8 is the Specialized Transportation Grant Program Cycle 12 funding recommendations. You had some questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Board, for allowing me to pull this item from the consent calendar for discussion. We had our Transportation Committee meeting last Friday, where I'm a committee member representing the South County cities. And I have 3 specific concerns from when this Cycle 12 subject was discussed that I wanted to discuss with the board. But before I do that, I just wanted to mention, and I'm paraphrasing CEO Carta from that day when he gave a report, so he can correct me, please, if I misstate anything. But you made some comments, and I listened to your comments carefully, and I thought to myself, and I'll say what the comments were in a moment, but what I thought to myself when I heard them is, I think pretty much everybody on the Transportation Committee, and hopefully I think everybody on the Sandag board, probably agrees with those comments. They might disagree on how we get there, but they agree with their comments. And the comments that you were talking about, in addition to extending and expanding the Youth Opportunity Pass program, you were talking about that Sandag is always looking for new concepts and the best concepts for transit to deliver for San Diego the best options for transportation for the entire county, including traditionally underserved areas. Not looking just for programs that maybe serve one small part of our county, but looking at programs that really serve everybody in a fair way, including traditionally underserved areas. And that this takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of money to do that, but Sandag's dedicated to it. So I had those thoughts in my mind when we arrived at this particular subject. And before I give my further comments, I did have a question for staff. I notice, if I'm wrong, please correct me, I might be wrong. I notice that the information provided to the board today does not include the slide where FACT was ranked number 1. Is that correct? Or is that in here?
It would be in this, I think, in the agenda package.
I'm looking for it, if you can point it to me, because I'm looking at attachment two, the 2 pages of attachment 2, and I'm looking at attachment 3, and I'm not seeing the attachment. And again, if it's further on, just let me know. That was one of the main concerns of the Transportation Committee, including some very relevant and specific questions from Councilmember Campillo.
Sure. So on attachment 3, it's line 5. The project is called Ride Fact, Facilitating Access to Coordinated Transportation.
Okay, but that is not the attachment that we had that showed fact ranked. The Ride Fact, I thought in particular, was ranked. Remember our discussion? Remember Councilmember Campillo's questions? Well, I thought fact, we had an attachment where fact was scored. I thought either 1 or 2 after a first review before the outside evaluators were taken into account.
Yeah. So just to clarify here.
Please.
Yeah. So there are 2 funding sources, senior mini grant and section 5310. So fact applied for both funding sources under different programs and projects. So on the section 5310 traditional projects, I don't believe they applied under that, but they did apply. I misspoke. They did receive or would be primed to receive mobility management funding. That is in attachment 2 on the upper corner. And then on the
I
senior
think
mini
that's
grant.
attachment 3, but if I can just interrupt you for a moment. What you're discussing is not what I'm discussing. I'm solely discussing where they did apply for the section 5310 funding. And on the attachment number 2, page 2, it shows fact at the bottom is number 10 for the specific project known as Ride Fact, which was not funded. And I thought we had an attachment at the Transportation Committee in regard to this specific non-traditional projects under 5310, where prior to taking the outside evaluators into account, they were listed as the number 1 recommendation for funding.
Okay, now I understand where you're coming from. Thank you. So that project, the average score was 91.15, which was the third highest or the third highest average score, but we use that average score as a reference point. So when we use the sum of ranks approach, they were ranked number 10. And so because, as Councilmember Shu was mentioning earlier, there are not enough sufficient funds to fund all the projects that are needed. So that is unfortunately one of the projects that is not recommended.
So yeah, I'm familiar with the footnote on the bottom of attachment 2, which you just described. But my question was that what you just described, where they were ranked 2 or 3, that attachment was not included in here as it was for the Transportation Committee?
I believe it's identical to the.
Well, I don't see any attachment in here in 5310 where Ride Facts application is ranked 3 or 2, as you just described. I only see one where they're ranked 10th, but I can move on. But the reason I raise this to the board is I certainly understand that there are processes developed that go down to committees and then to staff to evaluate grants. And they go through those processes, and I'm sure they went through them and followed the guidance, and I'm not doubting staff's work on it. But the concern for me, when I look at the final 5310 funding recommendations in front of us today, are that there are multiple grants for multiple entities, 5, 6 grants, 7 grants for MTS, et cetera, et cetera. And the only one that was recommended for 0 funding was FACTS, specific Ride Fact program. And if you recall from our Transportation Committee meeting, at that meeting, I asked you, is there another entity in the county that provides county-wide service curb to curb for handicapped individuals and accommodates wheelchairs as Ride Fact does, and for mobility challenged seniors? And I believe you said, yes, there is. And I have been unable to find that entity. And speaking with the CEO of FACT, he told me he does not believe there's another entity that does that. So when I hearken back to the comments I mentioned at the beginning of CEO Akarta's, desires and to try to find even new programs and better programs to serve our community. I'm looking here at a program that we have that serves a county-wide part of our community that really, if you think about it, has some of the toughest circumstances of anybody in our community. And this brings me to my second concern regarding that committee hearing. Is at that committee hearing, council was asked, what are our options here to address this issue? And we were told we had two options. Those options being we either send it back for some whole new evaluation of all the different grants that are being recommended, which will cause a big problem because many of these are awaiting funding and we can't delay it, or we approve it. So those were the two options given to us by council. And when I thought about it after the hearing, I thought to myself, that sounds like a policy advice. That doesn't sound like legal advice. When council gives advice to the committee on what they can do, I believe we're asking them legally, what are our options that we can do? In my, more than 25 years of law practice and on every board, committee, nonprofit, profit, governmental agency, I've never once, and maybe it's the case, maybe I'm naive and you can correct me, I would like to learn if so, but how SANDAG works, but I've yet to see where a decision-making body such as SANDAG sends down to staff the guidelines and on options on grants. And they come back. We just had this on Coronado City Council, where grants came back and they come back to us for review. And we have a third option, which is to make minor modifications to those recommendations. It doesn't mean that the process has to start all over and there's massively negative consequences. And frequently we do make modifications. And I think that that option not being presented to the Transportation Committee caused the committee not really be able to make the proper decision that maybe they would have otherwise made. And so I guess my concern today, my question is there a legal reason why the committee could not have recommended the SANDAG board and why the SANDAG board could not do something? For instance, it was specifically mentioned by one of the committee members, I'm not sure if it was Commissioner Krantz or someone else, but they asked, well, could we partially fund one of the grants or two or three of them and provide some money for Ride Fact? And the answer was, well, no, not really. We can't half fund a vehicle, things like that. And then that was before we received the legal advice. So those would be my questions. Maybe General Counsel Kirk could address some of that, or staff or the other members of the board might want to discuss it. Thank you.
So just I'll say something in general on it, John, and the staff answer. Right now, we have, for a long time, we've been set a procedure of how we go about approving grants, bring it to the board. The board has every right to say no. So we don't have the third option. Now, you could change that. You could change these procedure of how we get there, but it's very specific procedures that the staff follow, evaluate, bring it to you, and you have every right to say no to them or send them on. I do agree totally with your point that Fact is the only entity that can provide such services to the county. And we've been doing, at least in the last 3 years, my best to make sure there is more funding to Fact. And I'll continue to do that, as my comments earlier saying, we need to do specialized transportation, but also transit need to reach every part of the county. As to the grants, it's not a matter of saying you take it or leave it. That's the procedure that's been established. If this board wants a different way to do things, I think you have every right to tell us how. But so far, that's how we've been doing it, and that's why we're bringing it to you this way.
So your comments, I appreciate them. They pinpoint and highlight my specific question. Is there a legal basis that prevents the board from voting to do something different other than denying all the grants or approving all of them? But I understand maybe that's how we've been doing it, or that might be the procedure sent to staff, but the board retains the decision-making. And I'm not talking just about future decisions. Maybe I take your recommendation or your comments, I appreciate it. And that is what the committee ultimately also recommended. And I apologize if it's in here, maybe I missed it, but the committee did not just send up to the board of SANDAG, this board, the decision to say, please approve or not approve the grants as set forth. They also sent up the specific request that the procedures be evaluated in the future so that they could be modified. Please.
Happy to answer that. And I will agree with the prior advice given, and I'll expound on it a bit.
Thank you.
That every time you have a decision as a board, we'll give you the advice. And I'm hopeful that when we do that, we'll also include a little bit of the why there. You can take a wide variety of actions, but some of those actions will expose the agency to significant legal liability. Whether it's our contract procurement process or a grant award process, you as the board, either directly, as in this case, or indirectly, as in a contract procurement, set the rules. Then we go through the process and make sure that those rules are followed so that there's a level playing field. People that are applying for the grants know what the rules are. We allow protest procedures at the beginning of the process. If people feel that the rules are improper, they can protest at that point. Here, there were no protests about what the rules were. Secondly, once staff carries out the rules as the board sets, then there's a notice of intent to award, a second protest process, again, looking at were the rules followed. And here, there were no protests. Ultimately, as this came to the Transportation Committee, and now it comes to you as the board, could the Transportation Committee have approved some awards that were inconsistent with the rules? Yes, you could have, but if you did, ultimately you'd be exposing yourself to protest by everyone who was awarded in accordance with the rules. So our advice to you there would be, if it was flat out, you cannot do it, I'll say that technically that's not correct. You could do it, but you'd expose the agency to significant liability of protests on every one of these grants. That was true at the Transportation Committee. It's true again here. If you want to avoid that significant exposure, those two options are correct. You can follow the awards that are consistent with the rules that you as the board approved, or you can start the process over.
And I just to add to that, these are the rules that established by this board to make sure that we minimize the risk for the agency and everything. You can establish different rules.
Right. So I guess my question is, I just would like to see the rules eventually. And it's one thing for someone to tell you, hey, we have this rule and you'll be exposed to significant liability. For instance, the discussion that was just stated by Council Kirk about, maybe certain bid awards and having rules where those could expose Sandag to liability, to me is significantly different than a grant, which is being granted under a process that should, in my opinion, include the discretion for the decision-making body to modify the results. That should be part of it. And so hopefully we'll look at that down the road.
I would say, Councilmember Duncan, that those are different perceptions. And I think you have a lot of members here that I think a discussion as a committee to address that would be appropriate, because I can say to you that, what if I bring you hypothesis, right? I bring you a group and I say, well, why wasn't this particular group in my community not funded? And then you're going to do that and you're going to do that. And so in order for us to, there's a piece of liability, fairness, justice that we have to make sure we actually, move forward and
reach. Yeah, no, I'm on the exact same
so
page.
I think we're on the same page, but I think if we're talking about process and moving forward and ensuring that there's equity in how this is being done, let's look at the procedures and the process and move forward. Now, the motion that we're making today is, if I am clear, right, as part of the consent item, is to be able, the recommendations of the Transportation Committee was to approve the funding recommendations for the STGP Cycle 12 call for projects, which is about $8 million in funding to support 36 projects across the region, right? I did not see the second point that you just mentioned, which is to ensure that there is a review of the current process. If you'd like to add that to that item as a motion, we can do that. And that way you have a motion that has accepting the current grants as proposed. And then the second item would be to ensure that there's a review of the current process. And maybe we figure out what the best way to review that.
I appreciate that opportunity, and I'd make a friendly amendment request to include that. And it was included at the Transportation Committee.
Okay, perfect. So we have a motion for those two items. Is there a second? All right, we have a second, and then Mayor.
Yes, and I just wanted to follow up with another potential option would have been to figure out a way to come up with the resources to fund all the applicants. And we've managed to find money for the extension of the Youth Opportunity Pass, which is a worthy program, but there is no more worthy program than the service that FACT provides. And so the fact, the notion that we bring it forward and say, sorry about that, to $500,000 for an organization that's providing critical service is a bit frustrating.
May I make a brief final comment?
Sure. So I'm happy we're moving forward on this with a motion and a second, which actually the Transportation Committee had agreed with. No one's happy that FACT is not being funded with this, with the $400,000 grant that they applied for, including probably many of the recipients that did get funding. So I don't think there's an argument there. In fact, did receive another grant, and maybe Zach or staff can kind of explain what they did receive, because I think that's the good news and how we're moving forward with innovative transportation for this population.
Yeah, Councilmember, I'm happy to address that. So back in October, FACT was a recipient of a brand new grant program. It's called the Access for All program. This is being offered by the CPUC. This is a set aside of funding on, if you take a TNC trip right now, they set aside, I believe it's $1 of each of those trips that go into this pool that gets redistributed. So FACT was our sole recipient of that funding. It's about $2.5 million. That grant will start with them probably sometime next month. There's no expiration date on that funding. So it's sort of up to them and sort of see how the demand works and how that service is going to be provided. It's very similar to the STGP program. The only difference is that it's on demand service. So we'll kind of see how that progresses. But you're right, they did receive another grant recently that isn't reflected because it's different from this item.
I will also add that it might behoove us as an agency to provide feedback to entities who do not receive the grants. I mean, having been a former executive director for a, really large organization that applied for many, many grants from foundations and agencies, I always appreciated getting the feedback as to why I did not qualify, or you were under by 2 points because of this or that. I think that that is always helpful for entities. It's unfortunately the way a lot of the cycles work for nonprofit organizations. And again, having managed many of them, I know how disappointing it can be. But I think if we can proactively provide information to folks, and then I'm assuming in the process of when people are applying, we're able to answer questions and all of that. I mean, I think those are things that should be taken into consideration as we're looking at the procedures and moving forward. You had
If I may, I think the executive director of FACT is here, right?
Yes.
At least I saw him. I mean, he knows that to Mayor Krantz' point, that we did increase funding for FACT. We'll continue to look for resources. But I also want to remind this board that it's also a matter of color of money. Like, for example, when we talk about next month, we're gonna ask you to extend the youth program. We're talking about using federal CMAQ money. And there is specific use for each color of money. But I agree with Mayor Krantz that we will never stop looking for resources. We, as I told the executive director of FACT many times, I believe in what they do, and we're going to continue to work with him to increase the funding. But we did increase the funding over the last few years to make sure they can continue to provide the service.
Thank you. Councilmember Duncan, you have another comment?
Yeah, thank you. Just two extremely brief comments. One, and I know we can take this up when we review this issue, and I'd be happy to participate in that if there's a subcommittee or what have you. But my belief is that a board must retain some oversight over what happens, particularly when I believe, and again, I can be enlightened on it, but there's 5 evaluators. And yeah, you have 5 evaluators, but they are not the SANDAG board members. They're 5 evaluators who provide recommendations. And I believe we should have oversight and the ability to to address it. And I didn't mention it earlier. I just wanted to mention during the committee hearing, the word anomaly of this result was used probably 30 times by other members of the Transportation Commission. How did this anomaly happen? How did this anomaly happen? How did this happen? So that's the basis for my comments and my request of bringing it up today. And the only other comment I would make just to the chair of that commission, I believe sitting to my left's comment that there's probably many other applicants who weren't happy with the results. I do disagree with that. For instance, if you look specifically where RideFact wasn't funded, if you look at the other 8 above them, every one of those were funded 100%, including 7 grants to MTS. So I think they're probably pretty happy with that result. But anyways, I appreciate your time and listening to me today. Thank you.
Just to clarify, I'm sure they're happy they received their grant, but I don't think they're happy that one of their other nonprofits that provide similar services didn't get any funding. That's what I meant by that. But I think we do, I think the transportation recognized where we were on this issue. The reason why the results are the way they are is because this board set up a evaluation process. The transportation committee set up a transportation process before. And we didn't know how it was going to turn out, but we wanted an objective system to do so. Like I said, we may not be happy with the results, but that's what the grant process gave us. That's what staff did. It's not Zach's fault. The process itself has some flaws, and we need to fix it. And the transportation committee and working group will work towards that end.
Chair, I'd offer substitute motion to send item number 8 back to transportation. Hey, work it out a lot easier back there than we can right here.
There's a motion and the second. Can staff share with me what would happen to the 8? Have the 36 projects that were already, have they been informed that they were going to be receiving this funding, or what is the process? This
Sure.
is just for clarification. I want to know.
So the projects funded through the senior mini grant program would start July 1st. Section 5310 projects would start October 1st. Between now and then, there are many steps that have to take place. The projects have to be programmed into the RTIP, the Regional Transportation Improvement Program. We then have to apply for Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 funding. There's an application process. So I would say that if the delay was about a month, we would still meet those deadlines. But if it was longer than a month, then we would run into trouble in terms of funding these projects that want to start at those critical times.
I'm just trying to get, because I think it's easy to just say, oh, send it back to transportation and then they can talk about it. But in the end, it's going to come back to the board, and we haven't had an opportunity to discuss what the procedure is. So technically what we're saying is we're going to change the rules of the game in the middle of the game, which I don't feel comfortable with, honestly. So I want to make sure I get legal. Right? I just want to clarify, and Mayor, if you can explain to me if maybe you have a different perspective that I'm not getting, I am totally open to it. But I always feel really uncomfortable with, especially because I know that sometimes it's, there's a lot of staff time, there's a lot of work. Again, I'll say this, having been an executive director who ran development departments that had a lot of money and ones that didn't have a lot of money, if you send it back and all of these folks are going to reapply, I mean, I'm trying to better understand what the outcome is.
All right, I hadn't thought about that, to be honest with you, but all the other ones downstream.
Yeah.
What I would like to do then is my substitute motion is to actually approve those that are in this grant and send back for reconsideration that one item, because I don't want them to have to go and wait another year for another cycle of grants. And if they can bring that back, with it, let's say that transportation was to say, yes, we've found a way to fund this, and they can bring it back to the next meeting, which is in less
To
than 30
explore
days.
opportunities for funding. I love that.
I think
Other-
that's
yeah.
the way I would make that amendment. Does that work, John?
I believe that's consistent with the process that the board defined. I just want to double check with our grants experts at the table here to make sure they don't see any issues with that.
I don't think so. I just to clarify, so we would approve what's here and that second item would be bringing back the process
That's
and
correct.
trying to figure out, okay,
Yeah.
yes, that would be consistent with what's been advertised.
And, no, and so that's the first motion. And then the substitute motion is to, because the first motion already approves it, right?
Right.
So your substitute motion, just to clarify, sir, and I could be wrong, is to.
We could make that
have
as
the
a friendly
particular-
amendment,
Yeah,
though.
friendly amendment to look at the funding for a fact, to see if there's other opportunities for funding for them, specifically for the Transportation Committee to really be able to explore, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we could
Works
bring that
better
back.
that
here.
way.
So you,
I would be happy to amend it, do
Okay.
that friendly amendment. So it's again, it's a three-part motion. We approve all the grants as set forth by staff today for approval by the board. Two, we recognize and add that the Transportation Committee, or even if we don't say the Transportation Committee said it, that we say that we will review this process for future grant awards. And then part three would be to send back just specifically the ride fact program to be reviewed by the Transportation Committee to see if there may be alternates and have staff advise accordingly. That would be my amendments, and I believe it would be one motion.
The seconder is fine with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, so the substitute motion is being withdrawn, so that we're moving back to Councilman Duncan's motion.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
fantastic. Well, I don't know about you, but I can't go through a meeting for 4 hours and not be able to have a bathroom break. So we're going to have a 10-minute bathroom break and we'll be back for item number 12. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Now we are going to, I'm going to ask everybody to take their seats. We're going to move on to item number 12, the proposed 2023 legislative program. I'm going to hand it over to Robin and her team to share with them the work that they've done on this item.
Okay, thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you. We appreciate the interest in the legislative program. There's three things that I just wanted to make sure we're clear to everyone before we start the discussion on this one. So the legislative program, this is a framework that we use to help guide our policy and legislative activities in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. every year. It was originally created in 2002, and we make slight adjustments every year, but outside of that, it typically stays about the same. And it does not commit Sandag to doing anything in the San Diego region. That's the second thing to be aware of. And then lastly, the legislative program is always implemented consistent with board direction. So I know that there's sometimes thoughts about making it more specific or making it more broad. And what does it mean? What does it not mean? I just want to make sure you all know that anything in the legislative program would always be implemented consistent with the latest direction that we've been receiving from the board. So with that, at the executive committee's last meeting, we presented the proposed 2023 legislative program. And there were two changes that staff were recommending compared to last year. Those two changes had to do with one, underscoring our commitment to ongoing and sustainable transit operations funding with a focus on our Zero Fare or Youth Opportunity Pass program. And the second change was the addition of a new goal tied to Vision Zero. So really trying to underscore the commitment that this board has made to implementing Vision Zero in the San Diego region. Now, the executive committee did have a pretty extensive conversation about this item. And as a result of that, there were additional changes that you see reflected in the proposed program coming before you today. So I'll just run through those. I'm going to do my best to sort of summarize the conversation. I certainly don't want to mischaracterize anything that was said. So please correct me if I say something that you don't feel is representative. Running through this, and this is in attachment 1 of your board reports for the item, page 83, I think, in your online packets, if you're looking at that. Okay, so there were questions raised regarding goal number 3 and whether or not this goal would include support for a regional road usage charge. So we want to make really clear this goal was originally added to the legislative program back in 2002 when the program was created. And it's really meant to be a standing goal to implement the regional plan. Nothing has changed in this goal between last year and this year. And like I said, we would intend to implement this goal as well as the entirety of the program consistent with board direction. There also was discussion regarding goal number 7 and whether or not we should add language to that to specify that the funding would come from state or federal sources. The committee asked our general counsel for some advisement on that. And based on the feedback from John that the addition would restrict the funding sources that could be pursued, the committee ultimately decided not to make this modification. Next, the goal talked about adding language to the existing goal number 10 to underscore support for social housing development. And so we worked with the vice chair's office to get the language for that. You'll see that reflected in goal number 10 now in red. And then there also was a request. We originally in the new Vision Zero goal, which is goal number 11, had the word ensure, and there was an ask to change that to support. And so that's what you see reflected in the current version before you today. Lastly, there was a request to add another new goal that would highlight support for a regional electric vehicle charging network. However, upon further review, it was determined that this, the intention of that goal was already reflected in the existing legislative program through goal number 9, which references Sandag's regional energy strategy and regional plan. So we did not end up adding a new goal for that purpose. That really summarizes the changes that are before you today. I know that there are additional questions and some comments, so we're happy to take any feedback from the board today. And the executive committee is recommending approval of the legislative program for 2023.
Thank you. Vice Chair.
Yes, thank you for pulling this.
Oh, I was giving but go ahead.
Oh, you were going to.
There's 2 vice chairs. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't see your. Go ahead. I didn't see your.
No worries. No worries.
You were just taking notes. Sorry.
All good. Thank you. One, just thank staff for working so hard on this. Robin, appreciate that. Happy to move it. I think just having had the conversation in executive committee, worth noting, this is not anything besides an advocacy agenda. None of the things in here will happen when we vote on this. So I hope that helps diffuse some of the tension or energy. Doesn't mean people shouldn't be passionate about what's in here and what isn't. I just think it's important to note that it's simply a legislative agenda for advocacy purposes, and that nothing that we do today will automatically mean that any of these things happen upon our vote. So with that, I'm happy to make the motion to move the item. Chair.
Happy to second. We have membership. Second vice chair first. I'm sorry.
Oh, you know.
Very good. Thank you. And you already seconded the motion. So on item number 24, refers to efforts to pursue legislative and or administrative reform of the regional housing needs assessment process and state housing element law. I'd actually like to add the word lead efforts to pursue legislative and or administrative reform of RENA. And I have a few reasons for that. And I'm not sure that board members are aware of this as mayors and council members in your own city. But we've got, first of all, without denying the fact that we need more housing that's affordable to more people in our region and in the state, there's absolutely no question about that. But the sixth cycle was a pretty a large number, and SB 35 mandates that we all have the permits pulled or built 50% of those by 4 years into the 8-year cycle. So we're already in year 2 in 2022. So by 2025, if our cities have not built or pulled permits for 50% of our RENA numbers, everything after that is by right. And so right now, in order to meet the sixth cycle, the state needs to build 312,000 units a year. We're on board for about 100,000 a year, despite all of our best efforts. We're also really not responsible. I mean, we're not the ones we can't make the developers pull the permits once we approve them. We can't make developers, actually apply for housing once we, do everything that we do in our housing element. So I think it would be helpful within this leading efforts to pursue regional housing needs assessment reform is to not only look forward to the 7th cycle, but to look back at the 6th cycle, because the state auditor has found some anomalies in that were the result of SB 828, which changed the manner in which Department of Finance and HCD work together to come up with these numbers. And so I think there's some area that SANDAG, which is a very powerful organization, could lead on this and make some changes so that we will still maintain our unique and diverse communities as is written on the back of the wall here at SANDAG. So
thank you. Mayor Franklin?
Yes, would it be in order to make a motion to divide the question with regard to item 17 so that we could vote separately on it?
Yes, a motion to bifurcate can either, if there's no opposition, be adopted by unanimous consent, or if there is opposition, would require a motion and second.
I'd like to offer that motion.
I'd second that, but I would hope that the maker of the motion also might consider item number 3, that everything after regional plan in the first sentence be stricken. So that would include no value pricing, no managed lane conversion, high occupancy toll lane conversion, the alleviation against current constraints on transponder technology, transit priority treatments, transportation demand management, and other efforts that promote efficient use of highways and local roads.
So you would divide the question into 3 items, item 3, item 17, and then the balance?
Actually bifurcate number 3 and number 17.
Okay. That would be
Would you
acceptable
accept
with me,
that?
of course.
Would you accept that? Okay. All right. Well, then I still second that.
But wait a second. So the motion, the maker of the motion?
Yeah, I heard it.
Of the second, sorry, it's a substitute motion, right? Or is that was that the motion or the substitute motion? I thought it was already.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
So what I'm understanding is essentially the motion I'm making is to divide it into 3 questions. And then I think when the item comes on number 3, then I think a motion that would make the change you're looking for would accomplish the objective.
That's correct procedurally.
So as the maker of the motion, Mayor Jones, if you wanted to amend 3 in the motion that I put forward to reflect the changes that you said, I would happily accept that as a friendly amendment to
3 and 17.
The 17th, I think it's a separate vote, right? We want a separate vote on that.
Yeah, I want a separate vote on, unless you're willing to take
Will you
everything.
accept the changes that you've.
Oh, I got you.
offered?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Then we can keep 3 in there and then
Okay.
just bifurcate out 17.
And then I did have one question on Mayor Huebner's second vice chair's motion. Did you say anything about reform as in bringing back local control? I didn't.
No, I think we need to look at the RENA process itself, and that the implications of the RENA process are that Those numbers are quite inflated for the sixth cycle, as every city in the state is aware of. And so that when we're reforming, we lead that effort, we start not only looking forward to the seventh cycle, but that we look back at the sixth cycle and maybe follow up on the state auditor's report and ask for some adjustments perhaps in the sixth cycle to make sure that we aren't caught in SB 335. And also just FYI, SB 423, which is in this legislative cycle, is extending SB 35 and also removing the coastal exemption from SB 35. So I mean, hopefully the whole idea is that our RENA numbers, we don't lose our local control because we did not somehow get built 50% of our RENA numbers, even though cities don't build housing.
So there's no way to ensure that.
Yeah, right. So the RENA process, I think, needs to be looked at so that we get some realistic numbers and so that the housing that we need does get built, but that we don't get punished for not building 50% of our numbers when we aren't responsible for actually doing the building.
And then, Vice Chair Elo Rivera. So you're saying on number 3, expanded access to resources and technical tools that will enable Sandag to implement the regional plan, period, correct? And all the rest stricken.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Member Shu.
I have another suggested amendment to item number 7 for the maker of the motion and second to consider. So on number 7, after the word funding, add the words as well as funding to increase specialized transportation for nonprofit organizations and transit operators. So this is actually what we just talked about prior to this item to assure that we do increase funding for specialized transportation. I just wanted to add that to item number 7.
I'm good with that.
Happy to second. Thank you. Support it. Yeah. Okay. Do you still, Mayor Jones?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're.
Sorry, that was.
Don't apologize. I just want to know if you still want to talk.
No, I'm
Okay.
good. Sorry.
All right.
I just pushed it again. Hopefully, I don't know. Yeah, removed it.
No need to apologize. The more discussion, the better. All right, so here we're gonna do the motion to approve item number 12 with the different recommendations and amendments that were provided. So please vote on that.
Hey, I did want to ask that number 24 be moved from monitor to support. I don't know if that's part of this motion. Number 24, yeah. Your edit to lead doesn't comport with monitoring. It's more of a support. So it's in the category monitor, whereas everything else 2023 and above is in monitor support.
Good get. Yeah, so move it to another
Move it to
category.
support. I
Yeah.
want to support reform of RENA of
Support
flawed
leading
policy.
reform of RETA. Yeah, okay, I'm good with that.
If I may, Councilmember, just to make a comment, and that's what you want to do. Right now, regional housing need assessment is a law. As an agency saying support something that goes against the law is probably not the appropriate thing to do. Having said that, you're free to do.
Right now,
what
it says to, about reforming.
Yeah.
No, I think the
Monitor the reform.
clarification is that, so how about we do this? Robin, what does it mean? What's the time that you spend as staff when you have an item under support versus an item under monitor? Can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like? Because I think that's important to clarify for the board.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I can't really quantify as percentage of time, right? But the difference, we would approach it, if we're supporting, then we're actively looking for legislation or conversations with the regulatory agencies to participate in and take an active position, right? Whereas if it's a monitor, we're going to keep an eye on it, we'll track it, we'll report out at EC, but not necessarily be identifying opportunities to be engaged. Does that answer the question?
Well, yeah, I mean,
if you
in
want
my
a higher
opinion,
level
I
of
think we should
engagement,
be
we would want support.
actively engaged in seeking some adjustments to the RENA process. I think
Support would be the right
yeah,
category.
under support. That is my suggestion.
Yes, and in fact, just looking at the process, HCD allocates these housing numbers to the MPO. And so the role of the MPO is critical in this process. So before any city is assigned a number, it's, at this board and there's a process that's determined. And we all are familiar with the litigation that resulted from it last time. And we want to avoid that by encouraging the state to modify their approach to RENA.
Sure. You good? Yep. All right, so then we have a motion, please vote.
Can we clarify which motion we're voting on?
All of the items on number 12, except for number 17, based on the recommendations that were presented, including moving item number, I lost it right now, number 24 and moving it to from monitor to support. And then we're bifurcating it so that item number 17 is going to be taken differently. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Please vote. Did I miss anything?
And that motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Fantastic. The next item on the agenda is item number 17. Who pulled it? I forgot. Go ahead.
Yeah, I believe that we should actually be opposing efforts to eliminate the 2/3 requirement for special taxes. I believe that that's an element of our state constitution that protects voters and taxpayers. And so I would like to have a vote to remove it, eliminate it from our legislative plan.
Okay.
Or even, let me clarify. I want to make a motion that we oppose efforts to eliminate or to diminish the 2/3 requirement.
Okay, so, yes, ma'am.
At one point, a few years ago, were you talking to me? Because
Yes.
Okay. At one point, a few years ago, we kind of, the compromise was that instead of the majority plus one, it was 55%. And that many were then comfortable with that. Is that something that you would be comfortable with instead of 2/3, but 55%?
I support the current 2/3 requirement. So
Okay,
I'd like
that's
to
what you
see
said.
us
That's good.
vote on supporting taxpayers' rights.
Okay. I mean, the only thing is to remember that on this item, right, that it's about centering local financing independence, and it's common language that's usually used in local city and programs. I know that Carlsbad and San Marcos have used this before, so that's just background for folks. Member Shu?
I just have a question if I can get clarification. There's some things that come before the voters only requires 2/3, a 50% vote in terms of raising funding, and some things, some items, 2/3 vote. So if I can get some clarification, if the Sandag board puts something before the voters, what the requirement is, if a different entity puts something, gets enough signatures, puts something, what are the current rules that we have?
Discuss that at a very high level as it's interpreted today by the courts. If a government entity such as Sandag puts something before the voters that is a special use tax, then that requires 2/3 approval. However, if it is not put forward by a public entity and instead it's something like a citizen's initiative, then that has been interpreted by the courts as requiring only a majority of the voters.
Excuse me, Chair. I don't think we got a second, but I'm willing to second that motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. I have a substitute just to remove it from the legislative platform completely, because I think you had a modification, correct?
Well,
I'll second the substitute motion.
To remove it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And speaking out of your motion, my motion was to actually oppose efforts to diminish the 2/3.
So we have a motion and we have a substitute motion that was second. So unless you accept the substitute motion, actually, we would take a vote on the substitute motion, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to
Modify
complicate
unless
this.
they-
You had an original motion and a second
Mhm.
on the balance of this. We divided it. That motion and second still stood, even though those were going to be considered separately. So technically, your motion was the substitute motion, Mayor Franklin, and we need to dispose of that substitute motion before you can entertain a second substitute motion.
Oh,
So,
what
so
is-
clarifying, a yes vote on this motion would put Sandag in a position of advocating against efforts to remove or diminish the 2/3 requirement.
That
In
is
other
your
words, yes
substitute
vote would
motion.
support the 2/3 requirement.
And that was, I believe, seconded.
Well, I withdraw my motion then. I wasn't sure what your motion was.
Go ahead.
You need to dispose of the substitute motion at this point and either pass it or move on to the original motion.
So we have a motion with a second. Any further discussion? Oh,
Pardon me, can you please repeat?
give me a second, Mayor.
Just, I'm sure everybody's aware that there is a ballot measure that has, it will be on the ballot in 2024 on this subject. So I'm happy to hear there's a willingness to just remove it from the legislative program because it's going to be mooted by, I don't want to put any energy into something that's going to be voted on in 2024
Leave
by
it
the
to the
people.
voters, yeah, but
I was asking for clarification on the motion. And I'm actually interested in hearing whether we can you would be willing to dispense with that motion and move forward with Mayor Jones's motion, which I think is the one that makes the most sense.
Yeah, I'd like to see us vote on opposing efforts to remove the 2/3 because my position is that I oppose efforts to diminish taxpayers' rights by diminishing or eliminating the 2/3 requirements where currently required by law or the Constitution. So I'm going to stand by my motion.
I would just ask the clerk to clarify what is the scope of the substitute motion that we're voting on, so everyone's clear.
John, I'm not sure that I understand.
Yeah,
I
let me
was hoping you
restate it.
could clarify.
Let me restate it. So, yeah, so it would be, we've got support and we've got monitor. It would be to add a third category called oppose. And we would be taking the position of opposing efforts. Let me read it here. We would be opposing efforts to lower the current 2/3 voter requirement for special purpose taxes such as transportation and quality of life improvements to a simple majority.
so just for clarification from council and clerk, in our current sheet of recommendations, we don't have items that we necessarily oppose. So we're going to create a new category that says oppose, and that's the specific item that would go under there as under number 1, correct?
I believe that's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. So seeing no other, please vote.
Okay, thank you. And with 6 yeses, that motion does not pass.
All right, so then we still have item number 17 that we have to take a vote on. So is somebody willing to make a motion? You can make a motion to recommend.
I'd make a motion.
Remove it.
Right.
Go ahead, Mayor Krantz,
To
you can do
remove
that.
it? Yeah, yes, my motion is to remove it.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Member Gasto? Your name is on there?
I don't know.
Okay.
I
No
don't know
problem.
why.
We got you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Thank you. And with 13 yeses and 1 no, that motion does pass.
All right, with that, that concludes our meeting for today. Please appreciate everyone's thoughtfulness and discussion. Please note that instead of our regular scheduled meeting, we're going to be having our board retreat at Viejas on March 9th and 10th. And we've had all but 2 of our jurisdictions RSVP. So if you have not RSVP, please RSVP. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks.